Okay, it is 1 o'clock this afternoon on Monday, June the 14th, and I will call this council meeting to order, noting that we do have quorum. All councillors are in attendance, and we have staff with us this afternoon. And welcome to all, and welcome to our listening public as well. We appreciate you joining us this afternoon. I will ask you now to join me in a moment of reflection as we consider the business before us this afternoon. Thank you. Is there any disclosure of interest in any of the agenda items this afternoon, noting that you can declare at any time should the need arise? And seeing none, we will move into announcements. I have just a few with regard to the municipal facilities that are reopening because we are now into, thankfully, step 1 of the recovery plan. The municipality of Meaford will be opening their doors and at the office on Trowbridge Street and some of our facilities to the public. Also, the paid parking program at Memorial Park will be beginning this week. As I said, the municipal administration office is reopening as of today with COVID-19 protocols in place. We do ask that visitors wear a mask and use a hand sanitizer when they come in. Capacity will also be limited to 1 customer per our household at a time. We ask that everyone please continue to use online services at meaford.ca wherever possible, or use a drop box beside in the administration office, just beside the door. You can also reach staff at 538-1060 or by email to info@meaford.ca. Just wanted to mention too that Memorial Park Campground and the paid parking program again will be open on Monday, June 14th, today. Meaford residents and property owners can pick up a free resident parking pass window sticker for Memorial Park at the administration office. To be issued your sticker, you will need to show your driver's license and vehicle ownership. For seasonal or non-resident property owners, please also bring a tax bill. Resident passes are available during regular business hours, Monday to Friday, 8:30 to 4:30 p.m. As well as in the following evenings, we have the office will be open Wednesday, June the 16th, until 7 p.m. and Wednesday, June 23rd, again until 7 p.m. Visitors are able to purchase a $10 day pass or for $100 a season pass using the QR codes posted on site or by downloading the Honk mobile app to their smartphone. For more information on the Parking Pass program, please visit our website, meaford.ca/pay2park. The Blue Dolphin Pool is opening for the season on Saturday, June the 12th, and there was a bit of activity there this weekend. There are new COVID-19 protocols in place, including capacity limits. Screening protocols are prerequisite, and pre-registration is required for public and lane swimming. Change rooms are remaining closed for now. Again, for more information on pool programs and the protocols in place, please visit our website, meaford.ca/pool. The splash pad at McCarroll Park is now open. Again, it was a busy weekend and lots of enjoyment there. We ask that all users continue to practice physical distancing from those outside your household for that facility. Meaford Hall, Meaford Museum, the Meaford and St. Vincent Arena, and the rural community halls will be closed through step 1 of the roadmap to reopen. Meaford Public Library is continuing to offer curbside pickup only at this stage. They do have online services at meaford.ca/library. Again, for more information on COVID-19 impacts on municipal services, you can get more information at meaford.ca/open and closed. And that is all I have today. Is there anything from council to add? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good afternoon, everyone. And I just wanted to announce the Chamber of Commerce annual silent auction, which is being held online. Started on June the 14th and goes until June the 18th. I would encourage everyone to go to the Chamber of Commerce website and follow the link to the auction. There's lots of goodies there. As always, we encourage you to bid high and bid often to help the Chamber reach their goal of $10,000 for this auction, because those funds really support the Chamber activities throughout the year. So that's it for me, Your Worship.
Thank you. Anything further from council? Okay, seeing none, we will move into our public participation part of the agenda. We welcome public participation in all forms. We certainly encourage our folks to come forward with the presentations and also questions or delegations on items that are going to be heard on the agenda. So we start, we also ask though that anyone wishing to participate verbally, visually at our meetings, contact the clerk's office in the morning of the council meeting they wish to attend. And that way we can make sure that we've got all of the information as needed. So we'll begin this afternoon with a presentation from Brenda Orchard, the CAMA Award of Excellence and Leadership Recognition. So happy to have you join us today, Brenda. Thank you for taking time.
Thank you for putting me on the agenda. Happy to be here. So good afternoon, Your Worship, councillors, staff, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very pleased to be here this afternoon representing the Canadian Association of Municipal Administrators to present the municipality of Meaford with the Willis Award for Innovation. My name is Brenda Orchard. I am the Ontario Board Representative on the CAMA Board, but I'm also the CAO for the County of Lennox and Addington in Eastern Ontario. We really appreciated having Matt Smith, your clerk and director of community services, in attendance at our virtual awards ceremony that was held on May 11th. So each year, CAMA recognizes the value of excellence and professionalism in municipal administration through our annual awards program. The awards are presented to local governments and their CAOs in recognition of creative and successful programs, projects, or services. The annual awards have been designed to encourage excellence in the art of professional municipal administration, and the stories are circulated widely across the country so that CAOs and local governments can steal your ideas, really, and improve their own communities so that we all benefit from the great work of your staff. So it's really quite wonderful. So because Canada has a unique mixture of small and large communities, the awards are granted according to population. So we divided into 3 population categories: the under 20,000, the between 20,000 and 100, and the over 100,000. So I want to share with you the evaluation criteria, because I know you're proud of your staff, but you'll be extra proud when you understand the criteria that we use when we evaluate the submissions. So we look at the extent that the program, project, or service involves innovation, creativity, and exemplifies significant change. We look at the potential that a program, project, or service possesses to enhance the practice of administrators elsewhere and the degree of transferability to other local governments. We look at the impact that the program, project, or service has on the municipality and the organization itself, even if the innovation is not new. And we look at the sustainability of the results, the long-lasting, positive, measurable effects on the success of the organization. So that's a great yardstick to measure against. So very impressive for your staff. So the Willis Award for Innovation is awarded in recognition of Jack Willis for his contribution to CAMA. It's presented to programs, projects, or services that demonstrate exceptional, innovative, and meritorious initiative. So this year's winner of the Willis Award for Innovation for a municipality with a population under 20,000, and I do have to say extra congratulations, because for smaller communities, can be really challenging budget-wise and resource-wise to do these projects. So extra congratulations. So the winner for the population under 20,000 is the municipality of Meaford for your Report a Concern website portal. So I know we have a video to share with you, and Your Worship, you showed the plaque, so thank you.
Congratulations to the municipality of Meaford, Ontario, winner of the 2021 CAMA Willis Award for Innovation in the under 20,000 population category for its Report a Concern website portal. Launched in January 2020, this new, simple-to-use tool has allowed the municipality to effectively track, respond to, and monitor resident requests, allowing for enhanced customer service, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. The introduction of the website portal stems from the municipality's mandate to improve responsiveness to its citizens. It is in keeping with a council strategic priority to explore new partnerships with third-party organizations to benefit the community by providing enhanced services to residents and heightened community engagement with new online tools and technology. Following from this, Meaford identified the need to adopt technology that would integrate and provide a streamlined process in managing citizen requests. As a result, the municipality partnered with Access E11 for the implementation of a cost-effective, robust, cloud-based software solution focused on supporting the municipality's requirements related to customer engagement. 1 year later, Meaford recognizes the significant benefits that have come from having a system that allows for the ease of reporting, tracking, responding to, planning for, and analyzing requests, while at the same time eliminating duplication of effort and paper-based processes. Congratulations to the municipality of Meaford, Ontario, winner of the 2021 CAMA Willis Award for Innovation.
So, Your Worship, if I could just say congratulations to you, to your council, and to your staff. It's absolutely staff's creative work, but it's the support of councils that make that possible for staff. So it truly is a win for all of you. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, Brenda. What a way to start a meeting. Absolutely, to all of our staff. This is just wonderful. We were so honored and not really surprised, because we are so proud of our staff, as you have mentioned, for their dedicated commitment to excellence in customer service and also continuing improvement. This is just an amazing tribute to our staff, and thank you so much for taking the time to share this with us. We will certainly proudly display this in our office, perhaps our council chambers, but perhaps our office where most people will see it. Thank you so much, and congratulations to our staff. Well done, guys. We're so proud of you. Thanks.
Excellent work. Thank you. Goodbye.
I know. So moving on after that, wonderful news. We have two deputations on agenda items. First off, we have Marissa Dolitalis. So Marissa, the floor is yours.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello, there you go.
Oh, hi. Hi, is Derek, am I getting a video?
I'm not sure. Were you expecting one?
Yeah, I thought that was the norm now.
Sorry, what's the question?
Oh, there I am.
Yeah, you
Hi.
can turn your camera on. You're in the panelists.
Okay, great. Let me go back here. Good afternoon, Mayor Klumpus, Deputy Mayor Keaveney, and councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'd like to clarify a couple of points in the executive summary of the Memorial Park Master Plan Addendum. The executive summary states that recommendations by the PAC with regards to the lower waterfront campground area were made based on recommendations from 8 deputations by 4 individuals not associated with AMP. To clarify, PAC's recommendations were based on the stated 8 deputations by 4 individuals and much more, including a number of factors such as deputations and presentations from local residents as mentioned, 2, consultations with advocates of Memorial Park, 3, a review of the data from 2 surveys, one that surveyed only campers conducted by staff and one that surveyed the residents and ratepayers conducted by advocates of Memorial Park. 4, further consultations with our individual networks, including Friends of Memorial Park. And last but certainly not least, letters and emails and messages received from interested individuals, including the Moore family. Also note that the current proposal from Burnside includes a reduction of campsites in the lower campground from 30 to 17. AMP did not oppose this and PAC did not oppose this. In fact, PAC agrees with Burnside recommendations. We took it a step further with a reconfiguration of the layout, which adds more green space and better aligns with our proposed vision of Park First. In summary, I'd like to thank staff for their support and assistance in navigating our very first master plan. And on a final note, the Parks Advisory Committee is united with our recommendations to promote Memorial Park as Park First for our residents, visitors, and future generations, and support staff's recommendations as noted. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to hearing your thoughts as you discuss it later in the agenda.
Thank you, Marissa. Appreciate your time today. The second delegation deputation we have is from Dan White. Dan, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. And first off, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council, and staff, congratulations on the award. I assume it was much work put in and well-deserved. I also would like to talk about the master plan addendum that you're going to be looking at today. As chair of AMP, I wish to pass on several observations about the document that you'll be reviewing. The executive summary gives an overview of the process went into for making the changes to the original J.W. Burnside proposal as provided by the Parks Committee. From the summary, a reader may feel that there's not been a lot of input received by the PAC before making the recommendations. In actual fact, there's been a wealth of information garnered from a variety of public consultations, independent input, surveys, etc., that led to those recommendations. Number 2 point, as a layperson, I do not see why the municipality would pay another $1,200 or $12,500 to have a report edited when the municipality owns the report and the recommendations are, as quoted, focused on the high-level vision statement, guiding principles, and main goals of the master plan. I feel that council has enough information from previous deputations and recommendations from the Parks Advisory Board, which they put into place, to be able to accept the recommendations as written and move forward now. And in the analysis segment of the report you'll be looking at, there's a comment that says, based on proposed work, the final master plan document, including all or part of the comments recommended by AMP or PAC, will be presented to council in September. This suggests that there may be additional changes to the document based on R.J. Burnside's editing, including the Parks Advisory Committee recommendations. If council supports the recommendations, why would we need additional changes? Thank you so much for the time and for listening, and good luck with your rest of your meeting.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate your attending today. I have nobody listed for public questions. Margaret, I think unless somebody has come forward recently.
Well, that's correct, Your Worship. There are no public registered.
No further public questions. Thank you. Then we'll move into council's questions, inquiries. Point 6 on our agenda. Is there anyone with a comment question for staff? And Councillor Vickers, and then Councillor Greenfield, and Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. So my question is to Rob and Darcy, and it has to do with the parks and even the harbor fueling option that we're maybe talking about later on, or we are talking about later on as a deferral. So my question is to staff is how much money? So we've always been told that Memorial Park is a revenue generator. So if we include Memorial Park with all the other parks and green spaces that we own, do we still generate a positive cash flow, or is it kind of revenue neutral? And even, with capital projects like the fueling depot or a fueling station that is proposed for the harbor, would there be enough money generated from Memorial Park to help pay for some of these costs?
Thank you, Paul. Over to you, Rob. Are you going to respond to that?
Actually, I will turn it over to Darcy because he oversees the financial for all the parks and also manages the park, so probably best to answer it.
Okay.
So.
Darcy, over to you then, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. So at this stage of the game, the question right now is that both the harbor and Memorial Park are effectively revenue neutral. They don't have any impact on the taxpayer. In the 2021 budget, Memorial Park operations has a surplus of about $169,000, I believe it is. But that $169,000 is fully offset through a capital contribution for capital projects. So that's why it's revenue neutral. The harbor is much the same. The operating budget has a net revenue of about $100,000 over expenses. And again, that $100,000 is offset through capital contributions. So there's no impact to the taxpayer. The taxpayer doesn't have to pay for those facilities, but at this stage of the game, I couldn't say whether long-term there's an ability for those to be revenue generating beyond just their own needs, because we haven't done the business plans for them yet. And one of the reasons is we're waiting for the Memorial Park master plan to actually get completed, so we know how many sites there are going to be, what the long-term infrastructure needs are, so on and so forth, before we get to that point.
Thank you, Darcy.
Could I follow up with a question there?
Please go ahead, Paul.
So what about the cost for the parks, like for Johnson Beach and Leith Beach and the lookout up at Irish Point, or the one up at the tank range, and even St. Vincent Beach? Do you ever figure out what those costs are, and do they get just levied, or do they get put against the general levy, or do some of the excess funds from Memorial Park and the harbor, do they kind of fund that? And where I'm going from is, and what I want to get down to is, are all our green spaces, McCarroll Park and the park down there on Bayview, does the money for those operational expenses come out of the general tax levy, or do they kind of get charged against the income from Memorial and the harbor? Darcy, do you kind of understand?
Yeah.
Himself?
Yes, Your Worship, I do. So as I mentioned, both the park and harbor are revenue neutral for their own operations, including the operating costs and also their capital needs. So they don't fund other operations, but the taxpayer doesn't fund them. So, whether it's Irish Mountain or Leith, Beautiful Joe, David Johnson Beach, McCarroll, all of those locations, they are all funded by the taxpayer. We don't have separate line items for each of those parks. It makes up the total budget for the parks and trails portion of the operations. The only thing that's really split out from that is horticulture and beautification. So all of those locations are green spaces. They don't have any revenue generation, so the taxpayer funds all of those. Would we have an ability for the park and the harbor to offset those costs in the future? I really don't know. I think at this stage of the game, we would want to develop business plans that ensure that the dockage that we're charging or the nightly site rentals at the Memorial Park cover not only the operations, but the long-term capital needs to make sure that there is no impact on the taxpayer. And we would go from there. I think the advantage right now is that at the harbor, what we're talking about is, a large parking lot that is used much more for the general public than it is used for the harbor customers. The pavilion, the public washrooms, all of that is effectively funded by the harbor user fees right now. So the taxpayer is not paying for any of that green space. Subsequently, down at Memorial Park, the cost of all the staffing to keep all the public washrooms clean and the garbage removed and having all the parking at Memorial Park, all the maintenance required, grass cutting, so on and so forth, and all that public green space, none of that's paid for by the taxpayer, because right now the campground user is paying to offset all of that, even though it's public space. So there are significant benefits already to the public, from those two operations without trying to fund other open spaces and green spaces. I hope that answers the question, Councillor Vickers.
And maybe this is just an added question. This will be the last one, also, Your Worship. Do we know what it costs us to fund looking after those other green spaces like McCarroll Park and Johnson Beach and Leith Beach? There's probably about 7 or 8 of them. Do we have any idea? Would you be able to tell us, maybe not even now, but later on, what it would cost us to maintain those public spaces?
Yeah, I certainly could get the information for you. I don't have it off the top of my head, unfortunately, and I'm not even hooked up to the mothership, so to speak, to be able to get that information quickly, because we're in the Zoom meeting right now.
Okay, Councillor Vickers. And next we have Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to either Mr. Armstrong or Mr. Carbert or maybe Mr. Chapman. For the last few weeks now, whenever you click on to the Municipality of Meaford website, you're greeted by a notification that our telephones are being resurfaced, and we have great expectations for that coming forward. But I'm just wondering if someone can give us an update on how soon that telephone servicing can be done, and we can get on with the back to more normal telephone answering and responses. Thank you.
Over to you, Brady.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, Your Worship. We purchased the system on a Avaya Cloud Office through Ring Central Canada 2 weeks ago. We had our project start last week, and the phone company has given us a large list of items that we need to work on that I've split amongst my team and pulled in some resources from other divisions within the municipality as well. Tomorrow, we are meeting with the project architect to start to fine tune the system. They suggest that this is typically a 4-week process. However, we are hoping to get this down to 2 to 3 weeks. So once we get the main lines started, we are going to bring some of the other ones on after and over the next few weeks, but we are working to get the main line within the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay. Any follow-up, Councillor Greenfield? No? Okay.
No, that's fine. Thanks very much, Mr. Carbert. I know this is a time-consuming issue you're dealing with, and just keep working on it as expediently as you possibly can. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor, you're next.
Thank you, Your Worship. My first question would be for Mr. Chapman. I'm wondering about Cameron Park, Darcy. I noted the basketball nets through a resident had been removed, I guess. I'm not sure if it was because of the condition of the poles, and I'm just wondering if that was related to COVID and if the basketball nets could or would be replaced in that particular park.
Through your worship, I really wouldn't be able to answer that question adequately at this stage of the game because I just don't know, what the reason was. I'm sure that the nets wouldn't be removed because of any COVID-related issues. All of our, parks and open spaces have been allowed to be open based on the provincial requirements. So I'd have to get a hold of my staff and understand what the reason was.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman. If I may, Your Worship, and I would just look forward to a follow-up from Darcy on that question. And if I may, a question for Director Tory. I know that we're waiting for the contractors to return to do some work on the Trowbridge Street Bridge, particularly the lights. I just wondered if you had any update on when we might expect to see them back and to see the lights installed on the bridge.
Good afternoon, and thank you for your question, Deputy Mayor, and through your worship. We are working with our consultant and the contractor to get their electrical sub-consultant back to complete that work. The original delay was with some routing unknowns that needed to be fixed. Those have been rectified, and now the final connection just needs to be made. It is my understanding that we should see something in the next couple of weeks, but unfortunately the electrical consultant has been delayed in the past. So we'll keep you updated, but hopefully it will be within the next couple of weeks.
It's a good thing daylight lasts till 10 o'clock these days for now.
Yeah.
Anxious to see those lights return. Also, just to let folks know that the flowers have been up on Trowbridge Street today too. So they are making progress. Thank you. Deputy Mayor, anything further from you?
Not at this moment. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Anything else from council? Okay. Seeing nothing further, then we'll move on to point 7 of our agenda, motions and bylaws for decision. The first one, 7.1, is our consent agenda. And traditionally, we have seen many of these items before us. There are 5 items that could potentially be on the consent agenda this afternoon. The first one is CAO 2021-09, the physician recruitment update, that advised the Joint Municipal Physician Recruitment and Retention Committee that the municipality of Meaford is not in a position to contribute to the hiring of a physician recruiter, but wishes to continue participating with the committee on other healthcare matters. Number 2 is bylaw 2021-07 is that recommendation that we create a bylaw to provide for the adoption of the 2021 tax rates, establish the due dates, and to further provide for penalty and interest in default of payment for 2021. The third one is 2021-48 is a bylaw to opt out of the vacant unit rebate program under Section 364 of the Municipal Act 2001. D is bylaw 2021-49 to appoint a roster of engineering firms for the period July 1, 2021 to June 30th, 2026. And the fifth one is COR 2021-31 is an update on the 4th Canadian Division Training Center payment in lieu of taxes appeal. This was a bylaw to allocate the payment in lieu of taxes to 3 projects and further direction. Are there any of those items that anyone on council wishes to pull for independent discussion? Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to pull E, please.
Okay. Is there anything further? Seeing nothing further, then we could ask for a mover and a seconder, please, for A, B, C, and D to move and approve in consent agenda. Councillor Bartley and Councillor Bell, thank you. All in favor? And that is carried. Okay, moving on to COR 2021-31. the update on the 4th Canadian Division Training Center payment in lieu of taxes appeal. Councillor Bartley, will you move that to put on the table? Thank you. And a seconder, please. Councillor Bell, thank you. Did you wish to speak to that, Councillor Bartley?
Yes, I would, Madam Mayor.
Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Now, a couple of years back, I brought a motion forward that was voted on and passed unanimously for climate change, that the municipality would do what it could do to help climate change and lower our carbon footprint. Since then, the municipality has done little to lessen the carbon footprint. So I would like to bring back the number D from the former council meeting on solar installation, bring it back into our spending, which is $140,000, which has a payback. The municipality would get that money back over time. So I would like to do that so we could do our part to lower our carbon footprint in the municipality. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Bartley. So you are proposing to make an amendment to the existing. All right. Do you wish to do that now? Or do
Yes, if that's proper protocol, I would like to make amendment that we do include D, solar installation, as part of our spending from the D&D money.
Okay. I'm going to ask if there is any further discussion on any of the other items that may have been lifted off this list from the rest of council before we attend to your motion. And I don't see any other comments for any of the other issues. So what would be just simply then to add D to the 3 areas of projects that were included in the 2022 budget. And is there a seconder then for that motion? Councillor Bell. So I'll call a further discussion on this amendment. Councillor Kentner and Councillor Bell.
Thank you, through your worship, to Councillor Bartley. Can you just refresh our memory? Is this restricted to the museum building alone, or were there other elements to the project?
I believe there was 3 sites.
So could we maybe find out from Darcy what those were?
Through your worship, at this stage of the game, we're certain of 2 sites, being the fire hall and the museum, with a 3rd potential site being the Harbor House.
That's Darcy, that is a potential. When will you know about that as a potential? Will be confirmed.
Through your worship, well, yes, through your worship, sorry, we had applications in a few years ago that had been approved. But we had since, of course, had to give up on them. We would have to reapply for these 3 sites. We're fairly certain that there's still allocatable grid capacity within the museum and the fire hall sites. The Harbor House, we would have to do some more digging on and actually go back through a formal process with Hydro One to make sure that we could do it. So at this stage of the game, we're fairly confident on 2 of the 3 projects that had already been earmarked.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Bell, you had a question?
Yep, thanks, Madam Mayor. So at the last meeting, fellow Councillor Vickers and we supported Councillor Vickers on where we were going to direct these monies, and a portion of these monies were going to be put into reserves. So if we bring back this expenditure for the solar panels, I take it that we will be modifying the amount of money that's going to be tucked away into a reserve. Am I correct in that? And just modify the amount by the amount that we need for the solar panels.
That's a Darcy question, I'm sure.
Through your worship, that would be correct. Council had removed $400,000 for the transportation master plan, $400,000 for the harbor master plan and $140,000 for the solar installation. So the $940,000 was going to go into reserve. At this stage of the game, if 140 is brought back out, then we would then have $800,000 sitting in that reserve.
Thank you, Darcy. Councillor, Deputy Mayor first, and then Councillor Kentner.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I just wanted to clarify with Mr. Chapman, if I may. So these funds are in a working capital reserve. So we could revisit those funds at any time for a particular project. But I just wanted to know, and council hasn't discussed it, so we may or may not consider this at budget time. But if those monies are sitting in a working capital reserve, would they be utilized at budget time when we're looking at 2022 expenses to decrease that budget if we felt that was something to discuss at the time?
That's council discretion at any point in time. If it's in the reserves and reserve funds, you have the discretion to allocate those funds as you see fit.
Thank you, Darcy. Anything further, Deputy Mayor?
Not just now. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Over to you, Councillor Kentner.
Thank you. Through Your Worship, another question for Darcy. It's just that the green energy story seems to change almost from week to week. And I just really appreciate Darcy's assessment of the value and the merit of doing this at this point in time. I think it makes a lot of sense, and I just would like him to, reinforce what we're doing, or tell us if he thinks things have changed.
Through Your Worship, well, I think things certainly have changed since 2017 because the province of Ontario has artificially lowered the cost of electricity right now by at least 30%. In reality, all taxpayers in the province are still paying for it, and users, they're just extending debt. So, it's, instead of it being a 7 to 10 year payback on some of these installations, it might be a 12 to 15 year payback. At the end of the day, these applications typically have a 20 to 25 year life cycle. Actually, they have a 20 to 25 year guarantee where the expectation is that they will perform from start to finish over that 25 year lifespan at least 80% capacity. The panels will last much longer than that. It's just simply a matter of me having to purchase an inverter at that stage of the game, and replace some of the equipment. I still think it's a good idea. I mean, to Councillor Bartley's point about his recommendation that he made a couple of years ago, we have hit a lot of the low-hanging fruit by, doing programmable thermostats and changing out lights and stuff like that. All the cheap, easy, quick wins. Ultimately, if we want to reduce our carbon footprint, considerably at some point in time, a decision is going to have to be made where maybe there isn't even a net neutral payback, but we're doing it because we need to do it because we have to reduce our carbon footprint. So this still has a reasonable payback, so I certainly think it's worth it.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman. And Councillor Vickers, you're next.
Yep, thank you, Your Worship. This was never my intent to never come back to these items. I guess I just didn't feel comfortable bringing these ones forward. Capital and having found this money from the PIL, I just wanted to basically take a pause and make sure this is where we wanted to invest our capital. So if the rest of the council wants to invest it in the solar panels, I support that, and it was never my intention to say no to the solar panels. I sometimes question it, but if the rest of the council feels comfortable with it, then that's good, and I appreciate Councillor Bartley bringing this back forward. So thank you.
Councillor Vickers, anything further from council? Seeing none, nothing, I will call first on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment of adding number D to the list, and that is carried. And then I will call a question on the amended version of the recommendation going forward. All those in favor? And that is carried as well. Thank you very much. So we're on to 7.2 on the agenda, items for consideration. The first is DEV 2021-31 is the consent agreement with 317282 third line. And the bylaw 2021-50, again, the consent agreement for the same. This is a bylaw to authorize a consent agreement pertaining to 317282 third line in the municipality of Meaford be taken as read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. I have a mover and a seconder, please, to put that on the table. Councillor Bell and Councillor Kentner. Any comments, questions from council? Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, I guess to Mr. Armstrong, there is a phrase here, significant site alteration. Now, this is all built around the endangered species that are apparently on this site. It mentions the bobolinks, it mentions the meadowlarks, there's no doubt about it. They are great assets. Now, it mentions, it talks about development, building development, but a significant site alteration, when it comes to those birds, could that be something as fairly simple as somebody going out with a bush hog or a sycamore and cutting down weeds or grass or something like that? I mean, that could be very damaging to the habitat of these particular birds. So just how far does this protection extend? Can you help me on that?
Through the worship. So basically the municipality's only involvement really is if someone's putting a building and there's a building permit. So that's where our control would be. Other than that, it really falls under the Endangered Species Act and the regulations on what can and can't be done in impacted. And to be honest with you, I can't speak to that offhand on what that can and can't be done in relation to that certain aspects. I'd have to check into that further, but for our benefit, the intent is just to make people aware of the act and that they're required to follow the act in relation to that.
Okay. Follow up for that, Councillor Greenfield.
Yes, thanks again, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Armstrong, when you have an opportunity, would you mind speaking on that? Because not only for this property, but a number of our properties in the future, this could have a bearing on what goes on. Thank you.
Thank you, Harley. Anything further on this? Councillor Vickers.
Thank you, Your Worship, and to you, Rob. Kind of maybe just to follow up from what Harley was talking about, and you know, I read the report and I didn't really quite understand where it was all coming from or what was going on. So what I'm gathering is that there is a severance that has gone through, separating the 9.6 acre parcel from the 103 acre parcel. So the house is on the 9.6 acres, I think, and then the business is on the 103 acres. Does this mean that there will never be able to be a building permit for a dwelling on the 103 acres, Rob? Or just, it seems there's information there, but I just don't understand what it is.
Yeah, through Your Worship, development can occur if they wanted to put a building. This is more just putting notice on title that like the existing owner, they're aware of this because of this process. But if they were to sell the property to someone else and they were coming in, it's just to provide them notice. It's really up to them. It's their responsibility to ensure compliance with the Endangered Species Act. And it's just to put them on notice when they apply for a building permit that they should be looking and satisfying themselves that they're not impacting the endangered species that could potentially be on the property. So no, it's not a prohibition on future buildings on the lands.
Okay, please follow up.
Yeah, and just to kind of to go on a little bit further with what Harley had to say. So is it possible for this ground to be used as like to be cultivated and put into a soybean crop or a small grains, wheat, barley, or corn crop? Or is this saying that there'll be nothing but either a hay crop or a pasture crop allowed onto this farm?
Yeah, through your worship, that's one of the things I'll have to find out is what is the scope of things that can happen in relation to the protection. I have to check into that so I can report back on that.
Thank you, Rob. Anything further then? Then I will call the question. All in favor of approval of this recommendation? 1, 2, 3. Those against? That is carried. Next one is COR 2021-34, the Memorial Park Master Plan Addendum. The recommendation reads that the Council of Municipality of Meaford direct staff to engage R.J. Burnside and Associated Limited to update Memorial Park Master Plan to include the recommendations from the Parks Advisory Committee at an upset cost of $12,500. Number 2, authorize the treasurer to transfer up to $12,500 from the Memorial Park Reserve Fund to fund these costs. And 3, to provide council with the final Memorial Park Master Plan in September of 2021 for consideration towards the endorsement of the plan to be used as a guiding document in the development of a business plan and future capital budget development. And I have a mover and a seconder, please, to put that on the table. Councillor Bartley and a deputy mayor. And questions, comments on this item? Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and probably to Darcy, he headed all this up. In response to Dan's request, and I was thinking of this also, is we own this document, the Burnside document, and if council approves of the addendums and the things that the PAC came up with, why can staff not write in the Burnside report and save the $12,000? Is it that difficult to add these to the report?
Through your worship, Brady is actually the project manager for this project, so I'm going to let him answer at least as many questions as he's comfortable in answering through this process. And if I need to step in, then I will, but we're going to let him have a go at it.
Welcome, Brady.
Thank you. Through your worship, the Burnside document was submitted to us based on their calculations, their drawings, their use of the surveys, and everything like that to create a comprehensive document. The proposed changes, and this was discussed with the Parks Advisory Committee as well, impact many different areas that could be proprietary or the municipality's not own software to maintain, such as redesigning the lower waterfront area. We don't own the software or the ability to do those types of designs. The additional fees are to run those additional calculations, but also to leverage their design team and their infrastructure team to make sure that what we are asking for is properly scoped with regards to the AODA requirements, with regards to the infrastructure. Yes, we can tell you how much per meter the water main is going to cost, but significantly changing the lower waterfront and moving some campsites around, that is a little outside the scope of us as well. So we could change the wording part of the document, but we can't change a lot of the technical analysis in-house, and especially if they have used proprietary software that's not available to the municipality.
Thank you, Brady. Do you have a follow-up, Councillor Bartley?
No, I'm okay with that. I just thought Brady could do everything.
We know he can, but some things. Deputy Mayor, you're next, and then Councillor Vickers.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and I appreciate the response from Brady to that question. I really just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge this entire process. I mean, thinking back to how we started with AMP and the Advocates of Memorial Park when this plan was first proposed, and the tremendous volunteer effort that went into that group, and the recommendation to council to create Parks Advisory Committee, and now we have that group in place, and certainly Councillor Bartley and Greenfield will be well aware of the great leadership of Marissa Dolatalis on that group and the engagement of the members that really brought so much knowledge and expertise to the discussions that have led us to this point where we are now in the process with this report, and how different it is from the original report that was proposed to council. And this plan has seen more engagement from our public, I think, than almost anything we've ever undertaken. I just think the whole process has been quite amazing, and I think it really lays the groundwork for other parks projects and so on that will come forward. So I just I think it's been really positive, and I want to thank everyone who's been involved in it, because now we have a plan for Memorial Park. At least we're almost there with it. That really is going to provide us with a space that is meant for the public, just as we've heard from our residents. That's what they wanted to see, and that's what we're going to have for them. So I'm just really pleased with the process and grateful to everyone who's participated in it to bring it to where it is today. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And Councillor Vickers.
Thank you, Your Worship. These questions in, when Marissa was on the presentation before, I wondered about asking them at that point, but I guess I'll leave it till now. And I guess I'm looking for, some direction or clarification of, where I should kind of take some of my concerns. And I watched the tape of the last PAC meeting, and they talked about a lot about removing these campsites and the reasoning for it, with the trailers getting larger and the sites aren't terribly large, and the need and the desire, maybe not the need, but the desire to have more beach access front. So my question is, I'm concerned that, I guess there was some talk about financial consideration, but we take these campsites out. From what I understand, they're about $75 a night, and they probably have at least 100 to maybe even up towards 120 bookings a year. I just wondered, has there been any financial impact on what the meaning of taking those campsites out? Because I doubt it, and Brady or Darcy, I guess Brady came up on the screen there, can answer this, but because I'm struggling to see where you'll be able to take expenses out. It's easy to take the income out, but I'm worried that we will never be able to take any expenses out, and that way that the park will generate less money, which then in two ways, and partly this is where my questioning from beforehand was going towards. We'll have less money to invest back into the park for improvements. And also I struggle, I realize Memorial Park shouldn't not donate, but to fund a decrease in the general tax levy. But I don't see any problem with having Memorial Park in the harbor funding, the cost of our other parks, McCarroll Park and St. Vincent Beach and David Johnson Beach and even Leith Beach and that boat launch out there. So I'm struggling with, if we do make these changes, will we be able to, take costs out, and if we start generating less money through the process, then that more money will have to come from the tax levy to fund these improvements and fund the general operations of the other parks. So those questions are to Brady and actually to my fellow councillors, what is your opinion? Like, does Memorial Park just stand by itself and the harbor, or are we willing to use some of that money generated through the park to fund the day-to-day operations and the improvements of our other parks in the municipality of Meaford?
Thank you, Councillor Vickers. Over to you, Brady.
Through you to Councillor Vickers, through you, Your Worship. The kind of cost estimating and future budgeting of the operating side of things through revenues and the impacts of the master plan, that part was excluded from the master plan process back at the commencement of the project in 2018. The kind of criticism at that time was that Memorial Park and the harbor were being used solely to fund the operations of the municipality, and there was a lack of investment into Memorial Park and into the harbor. So when Darcy took over the Parks and Facilities group, this was one of the first discussions that we had, was how are we going to kind of chart the future of Memorial Park so we know whether or not we are charging the campers adequately, or whether or not the campground should be separate from the public features, such as Darcy mentioned earlier in the meeting as well. So the master plan took the public comments, the technical analysis, and all of that to create a document that we will now take back and form the business plan for Memorial Park. The business plan will then look at the costs from this master plan, as well as the service levels that are currently being delivered by Memorial Park and what the impacts those would be through changes such as less campsites, less washrooms, more public space, and all of those types of changes. Removing some of these campsites will potentially decrease the revenue, but it will also potentially decrease the capital investment needed to maintain those campsites for the next 5, 10, 25 years. So until this document's finalized, I don't think we are in the position to really understand what the full impact of this will be at this time, but it is something that will come back to council through the business plan in the future. I think making reference to the dollar figures that went back to the general tax levy over the last maybe 10 to 15 years, Darcy would have to confirm that number, but I believe it was somewhere in the $700,000 to $900,000 range that was invested back into the general tax base and not into Memorial Park over this period. Now the plan would be to determine how much of the operations should be funding the campground side and what the taxpayers should be supporting from the public amenities that are separate from the campground in that area as well.
Thank you, Brady. Darcy, did you have?
Yes, through your worship, I think if I could add this, it's a great question from Councillor Vickers, and I'm actually happy because I think this is exactly how I envisioned this process at this stage working. We were pretty clear with the Parks Advisory Committee that they shouldn't be concerned about the financial impacts of their decisions, because what their goal was not to worry about operations. It's not to worry about the annual budget. They're trying to make recommendations based on public feedback for the use of the space. And it's council's role to then take that feedback, but then also look at the other impacts, such as the economic side of things, and then make your determination based on all that information. So I'm happy that, you know, the PAC worked through a process to say, no, this is what we think that the public wants for the space, because this is what the public wants for the space. It's not about the dollars and cents. Now it's up to council to make those determinations if you follow that line, or whether there's other revenue considerations that need to be dealt with. By removing the 6 spaces based on the Parks Advisory Committee recommendation, it's probably somewhere in the range of $45,000 to $50,000 a year in revenue. As far as expense reductions, as Councillor Vickers mentioned, I don't think we really are going to be able to see any significant reductions in expenses. If we got rid of all of the lower sites completely, then I think we would have the need for less staff to maintain the park, because we would get rid of 30 sites. I also think there'd be less capital required, because we're not going to have all of that infrastructure on the lower end to support those campsites. But by only removing 6, we're still going to have to run all the water and sewer down there. We're going to have the pump station, so on and so forth. So you're not really going to save a whole lot. I think that, you know, I want to make it evident to council, we get to the point of actually doing a business plan. My expectation is long-term that we develop a plan and a rate structure, which I don't think our rates are far off of this, of actually making sure that the campground supports itself. But what that most likely means, and especially with expanding the public space site, there is going to be a recommendation from staff that the taxpayer is going to have to pay a portion of the cost of Memorial Park, like the green space part, which the taxpayer does not have to pay right now. Because all of those public washrooms, the maintenance of the beach area, the parking lot, so on and so forth, it's all borne by the existing campground user, not by the taxpayer. And I think that by the time we figure out what the long-term infrastructure needs are, just to replace everything that's there to maintain the park as it is, if we add on top of it, having to maintain all of the green space, we may get to a point where our rates are unaffordable from a campground perspective.
Back to you, Councillor Vickers.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I've got two kind of questions I'd like to ask. One's a comment, I guess. You know, to allow PAC and AMP and other people to make their ideas and suggestions without any financial accountability, I don't know whether it really does us that good of a job, because you know, my son Jack, he would love to buy new tractors and combines and everything else on the farm. Like, if you don't have to be financially responsible for the dollars that you spend, you know, it's pretty easy to spend them. And I worry that we're setting ourselves up, that PAC has made these recommendations with not a lot of financial consideration, and now we're going to be burdened as a council to make these decisions, and they probably won't be popular ones, because the PAC has made their decisions and their recommendations, but we're the ones that actually have to be accountable to the taxpayer. And I don't know whether by not having them have any financial considerations or being responsible to any of the financial part of it is really proper, because I think it's important for everybody to understand that not everything can happen all the time. That it does come back to the dollars. You know, I'm not saying that we should turn it into an amusement park or anything else, but I do worry that we're setting ourselves up to the point where we won't be able to make the good financial decisions because of the recommendations of PAC. So that's kind of a comment, I guess, as much as anything. One further question I have, and it's as to do with the you know, creating more waterfront area for the public. Do we even have enough parking? So if you take a figure, you know, if Burnside has these facts and figures that each person or each family takes up so many square feet, and we have so many square feet of beach, which means we can actually put, you know, let's say 100 families down there, but we only have enough parking for 50 families to be there. Was that ever discussed, or was that ever thought about or talked about, or is this something that Burnside in the recommendations, you know, take into consideration, that, you know, we could have a waterfront that could have enough room for 100 families, but we only have enough parking for 50. So really 50 is all we can use. So that's just another concern that I kind of had when I was watching the PAC meeting and just, you know, thinking about it afterwards. So thank you, Your Worship, for taking my questions, and these are some of my thoughts and that I wanted to bring forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vickers. Good points to raise. And Darcy wants to speak, and then we have Councillor Kentner, Bartley, and Greenfield.
Yeah, through Your Worship, I think I'll take the second part first from Councillor Vickers. So the Burnside plan that you're looking at right now, without the changes in the recommendations, has some significant parking improvements because of the recognition of the need for parking down there. So I think if this goes through and we take this back to Burnside, we're removing 6 campgrounds, and that's going to be additional public space. There may be some added parking that gets built in to the existing parking enhancements to make sure that there is sufficient parking down in that area. So I think that they'll take a look at that and understand what the loading is to try and make sure that there's at least adequate parking for the area. With regards to the financing side of it, I mean, I won't agree or disagree. I think, you know, as staff, we made it fairly clear to the Parks Advisory Committee not to worry about the finances because that's operational and budgetary in nature. And based on the terms of reference for each of your committees, they're not supposed to be looking at that stuff because it is a council requirement. It's a council responsibility, not something that you can download onto your committees. So that's why they don't really look at the financial ramifications of it because it's a council discussion and a council decision. The intention of those committees is to look at, you know, broad-based issues, to bring in community input and to provide some recommendations to council, which you can either follow or not follow, but not to be concerned about the day-to-day operations or potentially what their recommendations may even mean from a financial perspective. It's up to council to make those decisions.
Thank you for that, Darcy. I guess the challenge with that, and we appreciate the operational side of this, but when you have a number of volunteers who have spent so much time and energy, as the Deputy Mayor has reminded us all, on committees and provided recommendations, without that balancing financial perspective throughout the process so that it is taken into consideration, I guess it leaves a situation where council will have to accept recommendations coming forward as in that vein or in amending them to some degree to accommodate the financial considerations, which is our responsibility. So it's a difficult balancing act here for us all, and we appreciate the comments and appreciate Councillor Vickers' questions coming forward for discussion. All very important.
I would say, Your Worship, that this is always something that council is going to have to struggle with, because on the flip side, you know, as a staff member, I take a look at all of our recommendations that we make, and they're very cut and dried because they are financial based, data based, or they're legislatively driven. But, you know, we don't understand the community impacts, or like we might, but I mean, our recommendations are not to include the community impacts, the social impacts, you know, those type things, because that's what council is there for. That's what you're here to govern. So you're always going to have to make difficult decisions where not all of the information from any one party is going to be available, and you have to kind of mold that all together to come up with the best solution for the community.
Indeed. Councillor Kentner.
Thank you, through your worship. I just think it's pretty clear that PAC is responsible to us, the council, and we have two councillors, Councillor Greenfield and Councillor Bartley, on the committee. And I certainly will be coming down squarely on in favor of the recommendations that PAC has made. I think they have taken a great deal of public input into consideration. And I honestly don't think we're going to have a problem financing the future in Meaford or in Memorial Park. And if our real concern was money, we would sell the property to Skydev, you know what I mean? And let people go to other municipalities' parks. I'm in favor of this recommendation. Thank you.
Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And just in an answer to Paul's question, for years, the profits were taken out of Memorial Park and given to the regular tax base to lower taxes. And the infrastructure of Memorial Park has hurt due to that, and we're behind. So if we were to spend the money that we're spending now on Memorial Park and we get it up to par and the infrastructure needs are no longer there and there's still profit, I see no reason why council couldn't take the profits for another park. I agree that could happen once Memorial Park comes up to standards. Now, in the Burnside report, and it's not so much, Councillor Vickers, that the trailers are getting larger. Them campsites got shortened up because of the wall and the gravel that was put in there. So you put a small trailer and a vehicle, you don't even have room for a cooler anymore. They're not good campsites. So Burnside is saying, take them all out and just put some along the escarpment there. And though PAC was told not to consider the financial aspect of it, PAC did. And recommendation came forward by Councillor Greenfield to put another 6 in after we took them all out to help for the financial structure of it. So though we were told not to consider finances, we did. And I think we come up with a really good medium. That's only my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bartley. Councillor Greenfield. You're on mute, Councillor Greenfield.
How's that? Is that better?
That's better.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. Thanks, Councillor Vickers. Paul makes some good points. And I'm sure all councillors have found this, when you're sitting on public committees, you can't put your councillor role behind, and your councillor role is it's obsessed with tax dollars. It's always there in your mind. You always have that presence of how much is this going to cost, or I would agree we're going to lose some revenue in Memorial Park. I don't have any doubt about that. I've done my own calculations, which I'm not going to argue to be accurate, but I'm looking at maybe $40,000 to $45,000 a year less income at Memorial Park, and that does not sit well with me. But we went to the public. We asked the public. Originally, I advocated going to the public first. Don't hire a consultant at first. Let's hear from the public originally and get their opinions, and then hand them over to a consultant to finalize a report. Anyway, council decided to go to a consultant, and that's fine. That's the way we went. We got the public comments. The advocates for Memorial Park overwhelmingly supported a public place, a public park, as opposed to a campground. So, there were some people who wanted no camping whatsoever, and we didn't agree with that. The Parks Advisory Committee, whether we should have or not, there were discussions about finances. You just can't keep them out of the equation. But I firmly believe we hit on a compromise. I'm hoping will be acceptable to all. It will generate revenue. It will open another area of Memorial Park to the public. That's what we heard overwhelmingly in the comments. And I just want to remind council that this Parks Advisory Committee, it's not a Memorial Park committee, it's a Parks Committee. And there's going to be a lot more coming forward. We've got St. Vincent Park with almost $2 million of investment. We've got the former landfill site with millions of dollars potential investment. So this is a big one. This is an important one, but there's going to be more. And if we're going to keep the committees of the public, and I totally endorse them, council is going to have some very tough decisions to make in the future. But I think PAC did a good job, a thorough job. There was a lot of discussion. We could have gone on for months yet, but we came to conclusions, and they're on council's table now, and we're being asked to deal with them.
Thank you, Councillor Greenfield. And Deputy Mayor, you're next.
Thank you, Your Worship. And again, I fully support the efforts of CAMA and PAC, but I just wanted to add that I think there's a bit of a bigger picture here, and that we need to consider the economic spin-offs from Memorial Park with the improvements that will be made through this plan. I think we'll attract even more visitors to Memorial, and we know what happens then. They spend money in our community and return and sometimes come back and buy properties here. And I do think we'll have the opportunity to increase our marketing efforts. And if the park is, for argument's sake, at an 80% capacity rate now for camping, there's room to increase that, which will help offset any of the revenue losses. And I think there's also opportunities to generate additional revenue through the snack shack and kayak rentals and an improved mini golf and other services that other folks may think of that can be added to the park. So I think even though we may lose a little through some of the changes in the number of campsites, I do think there's opportunities with some creativity to regenerate additional income. So I see all of these efforts as positive and again, very much appreciate the efforts in getting us to where we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And Councillor Vickers, and then Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I'd just like to make a comment to Steve about your comments about how, in the last few years, number of years, 600 or 700,000 to $900,000 has left the Memorial Park and gone into general reserves. And I'd like to, I'd like to maybe push back on you a little bit, but we've spent money on other parks or other green spaces. McCarroll Park has had improvements made to it. And really that money hasn't gone to, let's say, roads and salaries and wages and other things, and plowing of the roads and gravel and upkeep. Is really probably all that money has gone back to the other parks. And I think we're probably, if you could get down to the numbers, that we probably still, as a general public and as in the levy, we probably still contribute, I don't know whether you want to call it substantial dollars, large dollars, some dollars to improving our other parks. So again, I don't want people to feel, because sometimes I hear that about Memorial Park is just a generator for the rest of the municipality, but I think it's a generator for the rest of the green spaces and the parks that we have in our municipality, as much as to fixing the roads and buying equipment and that sort of thing. So those are just a comment I'd like to put back and wanted to make. So anyway, thank you very much, Your Worship.
Okay. And Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I can fully support this at this time. I want to thank all of the people who've been involved in this. And I want folks to know that this council listens to the voice of the people. And this council was asked to buy a little more time. And the request was that folks wanted to have more impact, and we gave that to them. And the group that's working, the Parks Advisory Committee, they've had a tough go at weeding their way through this. A group that hasn't been mentioned, and I know has been very important for comments, has been the Kinsmen themselves. Appreciate their longevity at the park and their comments that I know have been taken into consideration. And thanks staff for pulling us together. It's a major thing for us, and it's a major step forward. And at this point in time, I am absolutely behind getting this thing going and voting in favor of where we are today. So thank you to you all, and thanks, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Are there any further comments or questions before I call the question on this direction? Seeing none, I will then call the question for all in favor of this direction and recommendation that the council makes, and that is carried. Council, at this point, before we go into committee of the whole, we've been sitting for nearly an hour and a half. I'm going to declare a 5-minute recess. Please turn off your microphones and your videos. $2:29. Okay. Welcome back, everyone. Noted that we resumed the council meeting at 2:30, and I will ask for a mover and a seconder to move us into committee of the whole, please. Councillor Bartley and Councillor Greenfield. All in favor? 2, 3, and that is carried. Noted that Councillor Bell has not returned yet. I expect him momentarily. And we'll move into corporate services, COR 2021-35, as the Committee of the Whole recommend the Council of the Municipality of Meaford approve the deferral of the Harbor Fuel Project until 2022. Do I have a mover and a seconder, please, to put that on the table? Councillor Vickers, Councillor Bartley. So we'll open the floor for discussion. Councillor Kentner.
Thank you. Through your worship, I just have a question for staff, and that is, what does temporary fuel services look like? I just don't understand how we can establish a temporary service, and I'm hopeful we can and would like to know more about it. Thank you.
Through your worship, I'm going to share the wealth again here today. Rod's with us, and he's been the one trying to navigate us through this for the last couple months. So hopefully he can answer most of your questions for you.
Hi, thank you very much, through your worship. So temporary fuel services, we've been looking into after we received the quotes back from the tender. We did start to look into some temporary fuel services, and they included services such as bringing actual fuel trucks down on site on a certain day, as a example, a Saturday, and have everyone filling up whenever they, on a Saturday, we give them a time frame. They can fill up then. We've looked at putting temporary tanks in just for seasonal service. There are harbors around that have got temporary services available, but they're not for retail. That is the problem. So we have been looking at a number of different temporary services for that. And I'm still actually currently working with Richardson Boats with some temporary services through Dave.
So Rod, is it likely that there might be an extension for Richardson's? Is that what I'm hearing? Is there a possibility of that?
Through your worship, yes, there still is a possibility that Richardson's are able to provide a temporary service. I should know more by the end of this week. Yes.
Okay, thank you for that. Deputy Mayor, and then.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thanks, Rod. That information is helpful because I have concerns about making sure that we continue to provide this service. I think it's very, very important to our boating community. Our harbor is so successful now with attracting boaters. It's not very long ago that we had spaces, and now we have a long waiting list. So I think it's important that we continue to provide the service of the availability of fuel. So I just wonder, Rod, I know the price is much more than we'd hoped it would be, but do we really think that it would be any less next year, or should we bite the bullet at this time and go forward and accept this lowest tender and get this job done and know that we're going to be in good stead for our boaters for next spring?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, through your worship. You know what we've been hoping for, as I mentioned in the report, a lot of the materials, or the majority of the materials, come from the US of A, and we're hoping when the borders open up that there isn't such a demand on prices. Possibly, you know, a lot of this is all geared to steel prices. It is unfortunately just for no better term a crapshoot. I would hope the price would not get any higher, but you know, with the borders open up and easier access to the materials, there could be a price decrease in this.
Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Rod or maybe Mr. Armstrong. Is this harbor fuel system, is it included in as a part of the harbor master plan? Is it an item that's included in the plan?
Through the worship, I don't think it was specifically mentioned. We have recognized the importance of fuel, though, for the operation of the harbor within the obviously maintenance of our harbor for sure. I don't think we specifically noted it in the harborfront waterfront strategy.
Supplementary, Councillor Greenfield.
Yes, if I may, Your Worship. Well, we have a wonderful harbor. It's got a good reputation. It's busy. It does generate a goodly amount of revenue. To be in the harbor business, we've got to provide fuel. And the reason I was asking if it was part of the harbor master plan, we did have a suggestion that $400,000 from the DND payout would go towards the harbor master plan, and I'm just wondering if perhaps, even though this is horribly overpriced compared to our estimate, if we shouldn't take maybe a couple of $100,000 of that $400,000, if that's possible. I think it's just in a general reserve, and put it into these fuel tanks. It's not an easy pill to swallow, but I doubt if the tender prices will be much less next year. I'm just going to throw that out. Maybe we should go for it. Let's keep our reputation going. Let's not have boaters say, "Oh, don't go to Meaford Harbor because you can't get fueled up." Just a suggestion.
Councillor Greenfield. And Councillor Bartley, you're next, and Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And actually, my questions were basically answered. I wanted to know, Richardson's license has not been revoked yet. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. He is still has fuel available till the end of July. So what it was he has passed his TSSA inspections, his annual requirements, but he's just unable to secure an insurance carrier to provide him with insurance with the underground fuel tanks.
And as a municipality, we can't help out with that. I know it's private industry, but like Harley was saying, this COVID has caused price gouging. I don't, you can call it what you want, but it's price gouging everywhere. Can't buy a chainsaw, you can't buy a boat, you can't buy nothing without paying through the nose. And I don't believe your price is going to come down next year. I think that people are getting away with it. They're going to price gouge, and I think we're going to be stuck with these prices. It's a sad, but I don't believe it's going to come down. So I just don't want to see the marina without gas. Whether we can help Richardson's do it for another year or use some of the other money, I think we're really, I don't believe we can put it aside too much longer. Thank you.
So through your worship. So sorry, Darcy.
Who's going to take
thanks.
Darcy?
I just wanted to, council to be aware of this in case, it got missed when you were reading the report. We haven't canceled the tender, but we're suggesting not awarding it because of the cost. Council has, the ability right now to go in a different direction and still award the tender if you want, instead of deferring it. We need to recognize, though, that the turnaround to have fuel is at least 12 weeks away if it gets awarded tonight. So we wouldn't have fuel in place until the end of September anyways. So the reality is that we can spend this money and have fuel for next year in all reality, or we can wait and reissue the tender February 1st next year and still be able to have fuel in May and hope that the prices come down. And, Councillor Bartley made a good point about, can we extend it? We've tried everything. We got a hold of our insurance company to ask if, even the municipality could extend our insurance, or if there's an ability, could we pay for the insurance to try and make it palatable? There's just very limited options. But at the end of the day, the thing that Rod really is working on right now is twofold. First of all, trying to get approval for small vessels to be able to bring 5-gallon cans down onto the docks and to a designated area where there is a spill protection zone so that small boats could fuel up on the dock. And we're trying to get approval for that. And the second thing is trying to see if we could still use Richardson's pumps and location with above ground temporary storage for the rest of this year. And we're trying to, work with them on that as well. That's about the best that we have available. I mean, Thornbury's going through, and this is why we think that, prices are going to come down. Thornbury is going through an upgrade as well, but they got their prices out about, 2 months before us. They're doing more work than we are because they're actually having to remove the old system that they have and put a new system in. And their price was $45,000 less than our tender. So we firmly believe that the reason for this is because of steel prices. Pre-COVID, a above ground steel tank could be purchased through our wholesale suppliers for about $4,000. Right now it's over $11,000. So a lot of this work is steel work, either because of the tanks or the piping and everything else. And that's why we're really hopeful that if we can just hold off until next winter, that we'll see more favorable pricing.
Thanks for that, Darcy. And Councillor Bell, and then Councillor Vickers.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor. And sorry I was a few moments late getting back sitting down here. What I don't want to have, and I don't think the rest of my fellow councillors want to see either, is that we lose a season. And I think what Mr. Chapman has just said does make a great deal of good, solid sense. And it is absolutely true. The business that I'm in, I have to requote stuff. Literally, my quotes that I used to say are good for 30 days. Even by the time I get there, the prices have changed on me, but I have to go with what I have, said. So it is true, particularly cross-border materials. It's getting really rugged. So as far as the money, I think that this council today, I think we could direct that we put more money towards this. Even if our previous tender amount that we thought we would be getting close to, it will be more than what we have previously talked about. But I also agree that it will likely be less than what we're looking at. So what Mr. Chapman has said about getting the fuel at this time through this season until a particular date, then the boating season, yes, it's probably coming and winding down. We need to move ahead though very, very early in the next year in order to get everything in place and get the contractor lined up. So at this point, I would like to state that we need to put more money aside right now to do that. And even if it's not used, then of course this council can redirect to put the savings back again. But right now, I think that this council needs to say that we need to have financial solid footing. And I'm prepared to say another $200,000 and direct it right now towards the new fuel tanks in the new year, so that we know that that money's there and that adds up on top of our original amount. And I think then we've got to go ahead with finances in place and retender as what Mr. Chapman has suggested. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Councillor Vickers is next.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I guess I'd like to speak in favor of accepting the deferral. I've listened to everybody's comments and they're all great comments and they all have a lot of value to them. But, somehow I feel that, like Darcy and Councillor Bell has just said, by the time we get this going even now, it's going to be, on into the season. I'm sure the boaters won't be happy, but I'm hoping they'll understand the predicament that we're in and that they're willing to, wait the end of this season out as best they can. As far comments about, it is price gouging, and until you stop letting people price gouge you, they're going to continuously price gouge you. So I think, this is a point that we can take a bit of a stand and defer it with maybe not a lot of pain, maybe some pain, but not a lot. But I would support the full deferral at this time, and hopefully, prices are going to come down, and there will be some more sensible pricing come forward in the year 2022. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vickers. And Deputy Mayor, you're next.
Worship, thank you. And I wonder if I could just start by asking Mr. Chapman, do you know, Darcy, where we're sitting with the harbor reserves at the moment? And then I have a secondary, Your Worship.
Thank you, through Your Worship. I'm just trying to scroll through the report here to see if it was actually in the report. I guess it wasn't. I'm not. I honestly am not too sure what's in that reserve right now, but I don't believe it to be $400,000 or more that we could actually just afford this all in one shot.
Okay, thanks, Darcy. And Your Worship, Mr. Willis mentioned that he would know more the end of this week in terms of the availability of temporary tanks or the ability for Richardson's to continue. So I'm thinking that perhaps we put something in place whereby if Rod is able to solve this issue on a temporary basis, then we defer and get this going first thing in the spring. And then if for some reason that doesn't work, perhaps Mr. Willis could come back to council and make us aware of that, and we could reconsider moving forward for this fall.
Okay, thank you for that, Deputy Mayor. And Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and listening to the different people speak, I'm going to lean towards Darcy's or the deferring this till we get more information. I like Tony's idea of putting the money aside. I don't think we should put $1 aside right now. We know there's a war chest there. When staff has more information, they can come back to us and we can make that decision, but knowing that we're going to be on the ready at all times. I think we should give staff the time to find out exactly what's going on. And Darcy, if you could tell me, do you know the company that is doing Thornberries?
Through your worship, my understanding is that it was one of the companies that were one of the high bids on our project, which Rod might actually have more information on as well. And I can say that the Thornbury project, they were planning on having their project done by the end of June, but they're seeing delays as well already just because of supply chain stuff. And they're 4 to 6 weeks behind where they were planning on being as well.
Thank you.
Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you again, Your Worship. Through you to Darcy, we have 143,000 in our budget this year. Do we not? That's what we budget. So that in itself will go into reserve. Is that the plan, to at least establish a reserve?
That is correct. Yes, and we can rebudget. Next year. We don't. We completely agree. Like Councillor Bell said, we're going to need more money. We know that the 143 grand isn't going to be enough, even if the market helps to reset with regards to steel prices. But we're hoping that it's going to be far less than what the low bid was. So we'll rebudget for next year and then top up using next year's budget.
Good. Good discussion, everyone. Is there anything further before I call the question for deferral? Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor of the recommendation to refer the Harbor Fuel project until 2022? And that is carried. Thank you. Next is COR 2021-36, the Harbor River washrooms. The recommendation is that the Committee of the Whole recommend Council authorize the Treasurer Director of Corporate Services to transfer up to $43,500 from the Harbor Reserve Fund to fund additional costs incurred for the upgrades of the Harbor River washrooms. And 2, approve the award of tender CORPF 2021-05 Harbor River washroom upgrades to Imperial Construction and Restoration, Inc. for $153,220.03, including the municipality's non-refundable allocation of HST. And number 3, authorize the mayor and clerk to enter into the necessary agreement. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please, to put that on the table? Councillor Vickers. And Councillor Bartley, thank you. So questions for Darcy, comments? Deputy Mayor, and then Councillor Greenfield.
Worship, thank you. Just confirming, Mr. Armstrong, Mr. Chapman, more likely, that these washrooms will be year round, and will there be some signage or anything where fishermen mostly fish around Bayfield Street to let them know that these washrooms are available?
Through your worship, yes, these washrooms, the intention of this project is for the washroom part of it to be year round. Just so council understands, we're reconfiguring the inside of the building so that the entrances right now that are on the back side of the building will actually be the entrances into the shower portions when it gets reconfigured, so that we can shut that portion of the building off in the winter so that it doesn't have to be heated. We don't have to worry about making sure that all that is winterized for the shower area, so that then the main washrooms can be heated and will be for season. As far as signage, at this stage of the game, there was no intention of trying to plaster signs up at different parks, just locations saying that there are public washrooms available, at this location. I guess if that's something that council wants to do, then you know, we can operationalize that, but there certainly was no intention of that.
Councillor Greenfield.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Through you to, I guess to Mr. Willis. I fully agree with the internal work of the washrooms, the changing of the accessories and the shower. It'd be great if we could help to turn that harbor area into a 12-month a year venue for various activities. But I'm wondering if we can't scale this tender price down some. It's about 40% higher than the estimate, Rod. I like cement blocks, and I know what you're trying to do is develop some kind of a pattern for other buildings down there. But I never heard anybody complain about the exterior of that building. A few complaints about the interior, but not the exterior. Why can't we scale back, just stay with what's on the outside for this year? 3 or 4 years down the road, if we get a bit of spare pocket change, then maybe we can change the exterior. But there are a lot of people in our municipality would like to put a 800 square foot addition onto their house, but they're going to have to settle for 500 square feet because they just can't afford it. Maybe it's time the municipality started to scale back just a little bit in our level of aspirations.
Over to you, Rod.
Awesome. Through your worship. Thanks, Harley. So the reason why we are doing the actual work on the outside of the block was because we're actually going to spray foam the outside of the block for insulation. We've weighed some stuff out about framing in the entire interior of the building and spraying the interior building and moving a bunch of equipment and stuff around, and felt it was easier to insulate the outside of the building with the spray foam and cover it. And then when we were doing this, it was going to match the existing facilities that are in this area, such as the sailing school building, and it actually will provide some match to the Harbor House area to establish a look down there. So that was the reason why we're going to the outside of the facility.
Thank you for that, Rod. Any further questions? Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. When I read through the report, and I mentioned to you earlier today, Madam Mayor, I was under the impression that there was a lot of, the tearing down or the taking down of the existing structure. But from what I'm listening to now, I think my question really is, how much of the original structure are we going to retain? Is it going to be 25% or is it a 50% retention of the building? That kind of thing. So if someone could answer that for me, because when I read the report, Madam Mayor, I definitely was reading it wrong when I thought that it was going to be taken down completely. So that was a wrong take on my part.
Through your worship, I can answer that quickly. We're keeping the whole building. We're not tearing anything down. It's just a interior gut and renovation. And as Rod just explained on the exterior, it's a matter of putting clips on, foam, and then siding over top. So the building itself, the footprint of it, the main structure of the building isn't being touched at all.
So Darcy, if I can follow up with your original comments on that, you indicated that the showers would be blocked off, or ability to block off the showers so that they're not heated or operational during the winter, which makes sense to me. That was my question of why would we need showers over the winter time? Can see it over the summer for campers that are in the area. But if that's the only entranceway now, is there going to be another entranceway into those, into that building?
Through your worship, there actually are multiple entrances right now, and we're just reconfiguring. So the showers will have their own separate entrance to get into the shower house areas, and then the washrooms will have their own entrances as well, instead of having entrance off the front and the back. We're just kind of reconfiguring some of the interior space, mechanical, electrical areas, so on and so forth, to try and maximize the opportunity to make sure that we have 4-season washrooms, but we don't have to worry about trying to heat and winterize the shower house areas.
Sure, thank you. That makes sense. Thank you. Rod, did you want to further comment? No?
No, I was just going to elaborate on Darcy's, just so everyone's aware. So the access to the washroom areas now will remain the same. The access to the shower areas will be at the east side of the building, back by the telephone booth. So there'll be a sidewalk wraps right around the entire building.
Any further questions or comments? Then I will call the question. All in favor of the recommendation as presented. And that is carried as well. Next is COR 2021-37 is the Committee of the Whole recommend that Council of Municipality of Meaford direct staff to include an infrastructure renewal fee for unconnected lots fronting municipal water and wastewater services as part of the 2022 water and wastewater budgets. And 3, direct staff to develop a policy and communication strategy to levy an infrastructure renewal fee for unconnected lots fronting municipal water and wastewater services by no later than September 30, 2021. I have a mover and a seconder, please, to put that on the table for discussion. Councillor Greenfield and Councillor Kentner. Okay, open for questions. Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So right now, if I wanted to get water and sewer to a vacant lot because I'm building a house, what would the charge be, a connection charge?
Through your worship, I would assume, the vacant lot already has a connection at like a curb stop. So if there's already a curb stop there is no additional fees. It's simply the internal fees, like within the property with your own plumber or contractor or whatever to get that done. If you have a vacant lot right now that fronts on a water trunk, like a water main, but doesn't have the curb stop, then the fees associated with that would be the equivalent charge as per the development charges background study, because it's effectively considered a development lot. So you'd pay that fee, and then you'd also have to pay to have the actual connection installed from the main to the property line. And depending on the length of it, soil conditions, so on and so forth, would depend on what the actual cost is, because we just contract that out and then charge that back to the property owner.
Deputy Mayor, over to you.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. So looking at the costs recoverable, for argument's sake, close to $150,000. So I'm wondering, is it the recommendation then that go against the increases for next year or go into capital? Or is there any potential for council to discuss? We've heard 2 or 3 times from the Rotary Club and their challenges with keeping rents affordable at the Godfrey Apartments. Is it possible that council could discuss whether or not a portion of this would go towards affordable units? Because we know that there are all kinds of incentives for new builds of affordable units, but there are no real incentives in place to support existing affordable units. So I'm just wondering if that's a discussion that we could have, Mr. Armstrong.
Just on the affordability side, I think we know that there's government regulated affordable that we know would exist. However, for us to apply that charge to other forms of affordable units will take a bit of assessment on our part, if that's the way the council wants to go, and figure that out, because we're aware of the Godfrey Apartments operating not under any government legislation, but I'm sure there's other ones who are renting out units for affordable elements that we would have to do that assessment. So I don't believe we would be able to go down that road as it relates to providing incentives or offsetting costs for those at this point in time. I'll let Darcy answer the questions on the impacts on next year.
Thank you, through your worship. If this gets approved through council and we go through the process of the policy and communications and it makes its way, it'll just be considered additional revenue through the 2022 budget process. So, I mean, inevitably, whether it's capital or operating, it's going to help to reduce the impact on the ratepayer. And that's kind of what was highlighted in the report as well, that, council's pretty aware that you're facing down the barrel of an 8% increase every year based on the financial plan. So this would help to offset that, at least a portion of that increase next year for sure.
Thank you, Darcy. Councillor Kentner.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you, I would just like to say I'm very much in this idea for the reason that Mr. Chapman just stated. I think that it's the people who hold these lots are going to get a premium when they sell them because they are serviced. And I think that in the meantime, water and sewer users are paying, a lot. So I definitely support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further from council? Seeing no hands raised, I will call a question. All in favor of this recommendation as presented? And that is carried. Thank you. Coming down to our 2020 audited financial statements. The recommendation is that the Committee of the Whole recommend Council of the Municipality of Meaford receive the 2020 audited financial statements and year-end report as prepared by BDO Canada LLP, and which will be presented momentarily on June the 14th. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please, to put that on the table? Deputy Mayor and Councillor Bartley. And I will ask Darcy if you would like to introduce our auditor to us. Not that
yes,
we haven't
thank you.
Before, many times.
Yeah, I'd just like to introduce Tracy Smith, who is the partner with BDO in the Owen Sound office. And you may see a name at the bottom of your screen as well, Jacob Perry. He's the lead. Oh, there he is, his beautiful face. He was our lead auditor doing all the field work. So I appreciate the work that they both put in. I would say it was painful, but it absolutely wasn't. We have a great relationship with BDO and they make our job easy on an annual basis to get through this process. And things are a little different this year. This is the first time we've done an audit completely virtual because of COVID, but it seemed to work out well. And BDO certainly has a good process in place that made our life pretty easy in trying to get through this. So I'll pass it over to Tracy and let her give you guys the good news.
Thanks very much, Darcy, and welcome, Tracy, and nice to meet you, Jacob. Thanks for joining us today, and the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. I'd like to thank the council for inviting us to your virtual meeting this afternoon. I want to echo Darcy's sentiments there. Doing a virtual audit is a little bit of a challenge, and Darcy, we want to thank Darcy and Kathy and their finance team for helping us through that and being patient with us as we figured out how to work through those challenges. So, and they did a great job of providing those the working papers and things that we needed to complete the audit. So thanks to Darcy and Kathy and their team. So you have two documents in your council agenda. The one with the picture that's on your screen there, and I think it's on page 71 of the council agenda, is our required communication to the council. The second blue report on page 117 is a graphical report that highlights some key financial indicators. So I'm going to start with this one with the picture. And I'll provide just a brief summary of the required communication and then provide a high-level overview of the draft financial statements. Since we are virtual, I will answer questions at the end of the presentation. Going to page 1 is the summary. So as your auditor, we have the responsibility to communicate with those charged with governance on an annual basis. The report contains all the required communication under auditing standards. And because the auditing standards dictate the communication, the report is very similar from year to year. The status of the audit is the financial statements are in draft and they need to be approved by council before we can release them in final. Once council approves the drafts, then we have to obtain a signed representation letter and do subsequent event review up until that approval date to release the final. Materiality amounts are material if they would affect the decisions of users relying on the financial statements. We provide reasonable but not absolute assurance, as we can't audit 100% of the transactions, especially virtually. So we use the materiality to help us focus the audit on our higher risk areas and to use it to determine statistical samples. Our audit strategy and procedures were outlined in our planning report. We report that there are no changes to the plan procedures and no issues were identified in our testing performed. So no additional risks were identified during the audit. Internal controls were required to report to you in writing if any significant deficiencies in internal control come to light during the audit. We report that during the audit, we did not become aware of any weaknesses in the design or the implementation of the internal controls. On page 2 is summary of the management letter. There is a sample representation letter in Appendix C. Independence, we are required to confirm that BDO is independent of the municipality on an annual basis. So we make that confirmation. Adjusted and unadjusted differences, we are required to report to you if there are unadjusted amounts found during the audit. Details of these are provided in Appendix B. And since the total income statement effect is not material, we can issue an unqualified clean opinion saying that the financial statements are not materially misstated and do not recommend that, that you are required to make any of those changes. Auditing standards require an annual communication about the responsibilities for detecting fraud and to highlight it as a shared responsibility between the auditor, management, and council. We did not have any issues or concerns during the audit. If council has any issues or concerns, I can be contacted directly for further discussion. That is the communications. So I'm going to now turn to Appendix A of the report, which I believe is on page 81 of the council package. And this is the auditor's report. And yep. So management is responsible for preparing the financial statement. And as your auditor, it's our responsibility to give an opinion on the financial statements prepared by management. Our opinion paragraph is in the second paragraph. An audit is the highest level of assurance that we can provide as a public accountant. And in our opinion, the financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the municipality in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. Therefore, again, we've issued a clean opinion that, and there was no issues or concerns that came to our attention during the audit. But the middle of the page, the responsibilities of management and those charged with governance are provided in detail. And then on the next page, it's the auditor's responsibilities that are detailed in length. Moving on to page 5 or page 6, page 5 of the financial statements. The statement of financial position or the balance sheet. So again, this is in a point in time on December 31st, 2020. These financial statements are meant to be a historical record, not a prospective look. So they were a historical record on December 31st, 2020. The financial assets totaled 21 million, which was similar to the prior year. Most of the assets are in cash, temporary investments, and long-term investments, totaling 16.3 million. The assets were shifted from cash to investments during the year, and overall there was only a small increase of 800,000. The trade and other receivables increase as the HST rebates were still coming in for capital projects and the provincial grant for bridge number 43 was still outstanding at December 31st, 2020. Financial liabilities totaled 19.2 million, an increase of $2.8 million. You'll see that the liabilities, the accounts payable and accrued liabilities has increased substantially from the prior year, and that relates to the number of capital projects being completed at the end of the year, and also the fourth quarter of the school tax still owing at December that was paid subsequent to the year end. The deferred revenue of 5.9 million includes your unspent gas tax, MTO funding, recreational land, and development charges. So that revenue is not recognized until you spend it, and shows as a liability on your balance sheet. There was an increase in the development fees and there was an increase in the unspent development fees and gas tax funds. Long-term debt totaled 4.8 million at December 31st. There was no new external debt at that point, and you had repaid 556,000 in principal. Net financial assets, your assets less your liabilities, totaled $1.7 million and is a key financial indicator. Positive means you have resources for the future. Although there was a decrease in financial assets in 2020 of 1.4 million, MEFR did invest heavily in your infrastructure, so you will see an increase in your tangible capital assets, and there was over $12 million spent in capital investment during the year. On the next page, on page 6, is the statement of operations and is the transactions for the year. The revenues include all external revenues for both operating and capital. Total revenues were $2.7 million. The user fees and user charges were, of course, down as expected due to COVID, with significant changes for the harbor and the parks and the Meaford Hall. The COVID, you did receive some offsetting COVID grants, and you would expect that the grants may have increased according to budget, but you also had some capital funding projects that did not proceed, so that offset the COVID grants that were received during the year. Expenses include operating expenses and amortization, so that does not include your capital purchases or your transfers to reserves. When you look at the total expenses of $21.4 million, that includes amortization. If you take the amortization out, the expenses would be 17.1, and that is a decrease from what you had budgeted of 18.6. You can see that comparison a little better in the blue report, where we've removed the amortization. The annual surplus of 6.4 million is the revenues less the expenses. It's important to note that that's not the operating surplus. So your operating surplus focuses on the short term is the amount that affects the budget and your tax rates. And during the year, the municipality had an operating surplus of 372,825,000. The annual surplus of 6.4 million that you see on this statement focuses on the long term. So it's the amount of external revenues raised during the year after paying all your operating costs and covering amortization. So this number should always be positive, as you need enough to make sure that you're making your debt payments and you're sufficiently reinvesting in your infrastructure. So on the next page, we take the $6.44 million annual surplus and we adjust for the amortization and the actual capital spent. So you'll see that you actually had capital expenses during the year of $12.3 million. That brings you down to your increase and decrease in net financial assets. The decrease in net financial assets is the capital projects that have not yet been funded or paid out and have been paid out temporarily from operations. The next page is the statement of cash flows. It's the last statement on the financial statements. It's the physical cash that's going in and out of your actual bank account. So about the middle of the page, you'll see 12.5 million came in from operations, 11.2 went out for capital, for net capital purchases. We shifted some money from the cash to your investments. So 2.3 million moved from cash to investments, and 555,000 was used to repay your long-term debt. So there was a decrease in your actual physical cash of $1.6 million. The municipality had significant investment in infrastructure in the last couple of years. Although the municipality has some external debt, it's not in an overall debt position. The municipality ended the year with $372,000 in operating surplus and has $13.7 million in reserves. So that's a very quick high-level overview of the actual audited financial statements. And I can pause for questions here, Your Worship, if that would be appropriate. And if you would like me to go on with the blue report, I can ask after the questions.
Okay. I can see everyone now. Are there any questions for Tracy at this stage? Councillor Bartley?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And this could go to Tracy or it could go to Darcy. On page 85 of our report, or page 6 of the financials that you just went through, the transportation services is over budget by 2.5 million. Can that be explained?
A good chunk of that relates to amortization, because you have a lot of capital assets that are amortized on an annual basis. That will be a good chunk of that. I'd have to go to the blue report to determine whether, if once we take out the amortization, whether it's above or below the budget. Unless Darcy knows that off of the top of his head.
Yeah, through your worship, transportation services was just slightly under budget, mainly because of fuel savings and better winter control season than what was expected. So the total reason for this is amortization. With the exception of water and wastewater, the lion's share of our annual amortization gets thrown in the transportation services side because of all the roads and bridges and just the cost of that infrastructure. So that's why they take on the biggest part of it, which is, somewhere around, I think about $2.5 to $2.8 million in amortization. So you take that out, they would be right on budget.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I just wondered, Tracy, if I could ask on the bottom of page 25, trust funds. The trust funds administered by the municipality are not included in the consolidated statement, 728,000, and the operations are not included in the statement. So I just wondered about those funds, and I guess to Darcy, are they funds that council has any access to?
Through your worship, my understanding, Tracy can tell me if I'm wrong, I think when we're talking about the trust funds, we're really talking about is the cemetery trust funds, the perpetual care. The municipality really has limited, if any, capacity to actually use those for anything unless they're, we're doing some kind of a cemetery expansion. We can apply for partial use of the funds. The intention of the cemetery trust, though, is really to garner interest on an annual basis, and that's what you use for maintenance of the cemetery. So that money sits in investments. We get interest off of it. It goes against the cemetery operating budget.
Yeah, and Darcy, you're quicker than I am. Yes, that is what those trust funds are. So.
Anything further from council at this point? Seeing none, Tracy, did you want to carry on with the blue part?
Yeah, I can quickly refer Your Worship, if I may, to the blue report. The blue report is a graphical look at the numbers that are in your audited financial statements. I know not everyone loves numbers as well as I do, so sometimes it's easier to look at those numbers in a different format and grouped in different ways. The numbers are the same as what's in the audited statements. This report is just meant to provide for some additional information. On the first page, on page 3, where are you today looks at some of those financial highlights that we looked at on the balance sheet, how what your cash position is, a breakdown of the uses of the long-term, the existing long-term debt that you have, the net financial assets or debt of the municipality. And this is always something to highlight. This is a five-year trend. And you can see that back in 2016, which is not that long ago, just 5 years ago, the municipality was actually in an overall debt position. So it's good to be in a positive position. It means you do have some resources and some flexibility going forward in being able to finance some of those capital projects. The bottom of the page is the accumulated surplus. So again, that's a breakdown of the accumulated surplus, both monetary and physical assets that's on your balance sheet. You'll see that there's $90 million that's invested in tangible capital assets. Again, that's at cost, that's not replacement cost. So I know you were talking about steel earlier, and the prices to replace your infrastructure would be well in excess of those original costs. I will point out that in this schedule, you do see that you have $4.6 million in unfinanced capital. The largest part of that is the library on the ongoing project with the library. And then there are various roads and parking lot projects that are still on the go, that still will need to be financed. There's $80.7 million in net capital assets financed, and at the bottom you'll see the reserves of 13.7, and in the middle you'll see the 372,825. That's your general operating surplus. That moves forward to your 2021 year. On the next couple of pages are just looking at some cash flows, the tangible capital assets. Again, you've made some significant improvements in the infrastructure over the last 5 years. You've invested $42.4 million in infrastructure over the last 5 years. On the next page, you'll see the graphs, the blue and the, we can just go one more page to the next tangible capital assets. You'll see the blue and red graphs. The blue is the capital purchases, the actual capital purchases. The red is the amortization amount. So again, you always want the blue bar to be in excess of the red bar, because the red amortization is based on historical costs, and the replacement of that, you want to make sure that you are replacing your infrastructure, which you are doing, and you also it needs to be significantly more than the red amortization that's at cost. The next couple of pages gives some more breakdowns of taxation. Going on to graphical look at your revenue on page 10, comparing where you are today and how you're where you get your funds compared to the 5 years ago. The grants, the green section has been shrinking and shrinking over the last few years as there's less grants out there. Page 11 of it looks at a comparison of the expenses without the amortization. So again, you can see in transportation, the budget was 3.6, but the actual was 3.3. So you were under budget in transportation. And then having a look at the departments of your operating expenses and what the municipality, what departments the municipality is spending their funds on. And then lastly, what you have for the future. So you've got $13.7 million in reserve, but I also want to highlight that the $5.3 million you have in obligatory reserve funds. So again, that's the deferred revenue that I talked about that was on the balance sheet. So it has not yet been recognized as revenue, but it is funds that you do have available, as well as the reserves for future projects. So again, a very high level overview, and I can take any questions if anyone has any further questions.
I'd say that's pretty good news, Tracy. Thank you so much. Wonderful to hear. And open it up for questions. Council. Councillor Kempner.
It's not easy for me to make an intelligent financial question, but if you were going to rate us, Tracy, A, B, C, D, E, what would you say?
So I'm involved in actually 16 municipalities in Grey, Bruce, and Wellington counties, and every single one is is different. So I'm not sure that I can give an honest answer to an A, B, C, or C, or D. You are one of the municipalities that is investing a lot in your infrastructure, which is always important. The challenge of that is again, how do you finance that? So a big key to that that's not really reflected in your audit process is your budgeting process and your asset management plan and what you have scheduled for the next 5 or 10 years and how you're financing that. So that's a thing that that although you don't see that through the historical financial statements, it's a really important part of your process, and that is something that your municipality does focus well on.
No, thank you, Tracy, for that. Anything further? Looks like you're getting off pretty easy today.
You didn't even give me a tough question that I had to get Jacob to dig out the answer for.
Oh, here it comes. Councillor Bell.
Well, thank you for this work, Tracy, and your staff. So right now, we are in a good financial position with our amount of money that we have in our reserves and where we are sitting with our long-term debts and our obligations. What's going to happen to us when those numbers change? Because they're going to change, because we're going to have some pressures put on us where we are going to have to go into a lot more money for long-term debt. So our graph is going to change, and it's going to change a lot. I mean, just a couple of things that are on the horizon, should they have to be done, it's really going to affect us, that we're no longer going to have more money in reserves. We're going to have higher level of debt. So our treasurer has often said to us about how we service that debt and how we are still in a financial position to service more debt. And that, of course, is a decision of council, whether we truly go into debt. So what's that graph do to us, and what does that position do to us from an auditor's point of view?
So again, that is not necessarily bad. You know, I need a house, and I have to get a mortgage to go on to have a mortgage on my house, so I have to go in debt. You need to go into debt if you need to, if you have things that are needed in your community. So the key to that is making sure that you can finance that debt, and that you have a plan, that you have a good 5 to 10 year capital asset management plan that allows you to do it in stages that are affordable to you and meet the highest priority needs of your community. So yes, you can't always go positive and stay in a net positive position. There are many municipalities that are in a debt position, but they are still maintaining their tax rates. As long as you're not going into debt for operating purposes, then there's not a concern. If you have to go into debt for capital purposes, that's a decision of council and the needs of your community. So I hope that answers the question.
Well, it appears we have no further questions for you, Tracy. So I will thank you very much for your presentation. Yes, and for all of the work. I know it has been very difficult. Things mostly are more difficult virtually, but it looks as though we have something to be very pleased with in terms of our financial management. So thank you for reinforcing that. And with that, Council, I will call the question. All in favor of accepting these audited statements as presented? And that is unanimous. Thank you so much. Appreciate you coming and sharing with us today. That is carried.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Have a great summer. Moving on to Development Services, DEV 2021-30 on 16 Berry Street. The Committee of the Whole recommended the Council of Municipality Meaford enact a bylaw to authorize a cash in lieu of parking agreement related to 16 Berry Street. I have a mover and a seconder, please, to put that on the table. Deputy Mayor and Councillor Bartley. And we'll move into questions of staff on this. Anything that was not clear? Deputy Mayor.
Your Worship, thank you. And I just wondered if I could ask Mr. Armstrong just for a bit of an overview of the parking for this building. I'm thinking primarily of the bike shop itself. And will people be permitted then to park on the street in front of the shop? And these particular residents, will they also be required to go to the market square, or just where will everybody park that's connected with that building?
Yeah. Yes, through your worship. So in accordance with our zoning bylaw, parking is not required to be provided for any building for commercial purposes. So when council dealt with the heritage permit for the bike shop out front of the Old Hills Dairy, there was some question. So I guess there will be some limited on-street parking in the area. We do have a number of areas that are identified for non-parking, no parking on the road. So they're limited. They might have to park up the street a little further to do so. As far as the residential go, there are some existing parking spaces on site parallel to the building with the laneway that are being utilized for one or two of the apartments. I think there is some additional space available, although this additional apartment generates additional parking requirements. There is available parking on site based on lack of use of some of the existing parkings from what I've observed. For overnight parking off-site, obviously you can utilize other municipal lots overnight parking, except in the wintertime. Currently our overnight parking is in Market Square, and if there is the need for parking requirements, they would have to utilize our designated areas for overnight parking in that regard. So, and the applicant, the owner, is aware of those constraints in relation to them. I think the key thing is council adopted a policy that established the rate for cash in lieu, and this is in accordance with council's policy for establishing that. So hopefully that answered the questions.
Thank you, Rob. Any further questions? Okay. Seeing none, I will call a question in favor of approving this recommendation. And that is carried. Infrastructure Services is next. INF 2021-08 as regarding structures 21 and 22 and the legal review. That the Committee of the Whole receive report INF 2021-08 structure 21 and 22 legal review for information purposes. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please, for that? Councillor Bell, Councillor Kentner. Any comments, any questions for staff? Councillor Bell.
Well, thanks, Madam Mayor. So this is a subject matter which has been sort of front and center for council for some period of time. I want to thank Mr. Armstrong for getting a legal opinion on this. My thoughts on this at this point are that it is now being turned over to the county, and you know, we're looking for your voice, Madam Mayor, and you, Deputy Mayor, to carry the desire of this municipality to Grey County. As the report said, that This is a boundary road, and the opinion is that it's a boundary road. The only area that does seem that it may be up for a degree of discussion is whether it's going to be treated as one river course that has got a slight deviation, or whether they truly look at it as two independent structures. I take the report to give me a degree of hope, another light on this subject matter, to get it, addressed and hopefully come to some real solid end conclusions. And at the same time, I also feel that with you two taking it to Grey County, the clock in a sense has started over again, that there'll be new discussions with new opinions and new background studies and so on. So this isn't going to be fast from what I am thinking, but it is something new, and it is another step in this long process. So I encourage both of you to impress your fellow councillors at Grey County and get a winning vote to do something down here on these two structures, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Bell. Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And there's different ways that the county can go about this. And one of them is that they stick with the existing EA and take out the bridges. I just hope that it gets passed on to the county that at the time that EA come out, we did have on our books that we may close some bridges. That has since been taken off our books. And I hope the county realizes that that really isn't an option for the municipality of Meaford. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bartley. Anything further? Rob, did you want to comment on that?
Just to comment that we have shared all of the historic information with the county, so they are aware of where we've been and to date. So just that's how I can respond to that comment.
Good, thank you. And back to you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship, and Mr. Armstrong. As well as sharing with the county, has this report been shared with Chatsworth?
Through the worship, we haven't shared this report with Chatsworth because this is just an information report to give council an update. However, we have had meetings with Chatsworth and the county, and Chatsworth is aware of the county as we'll be now taking this on and going to county council. But yeah, this report was just for the purposes of this council and information purposes, so you were aware of the current situation, because you're the ones that directed us to seek that legal input.
And it is good news, and thank you, Mr. Armstrong, for all your efforts in getting this back on the table. And yes, I agree, there is now some light at the end of this tunnel, hopefully.
Then all in favor, I will call the question, all in favor of receiving this report for information. And that is carried. And moving on to updates from members appointed to County Council and other committees and boards. Do you want to start us off, Deputy Mayor?
It would be my pleasure, Your Worship. Thank you. Grey County Council last met on June the 10th. The meeting began with updates from Dr. Era. He shared that to date, 111,000 doses of COVID vaccine have been administered in Grey and Bruce. Dr. Era expects distribution to happen even faster now for our second shots. The health unit has been asked to assist the region of Peel by demonstrating to them how our hockey hub, how that works. And that has been so successful in Hanover, and we've heard several times at County Council about people who've attended the Hanover Hockey Hub and how slick it is. So 9,000 people per day will be vaccinated in Peel. 25 volunteers from the Grey Bruce Health Unit went down to assist them with the startup process. Dr. Era spoke to the ongoing opioid crisis as well. His recommendation is to move forward with an approach involving partnership agencies, similar to what has been done successfully during the pandemic, to take advantage of that momentum that's currently underway. I asked Dr. Rare for his recommendation on mixing vaccines, and he suggested waiting for the opinion of the province, which should be public later in June. We just heard from Tracy Smith. Tracy and Victoria Watson of BDO presented the draft 2020 audit to County Council. And they again expressed appreciation to county staff for providing the necessary information electronically. The report can be found on the county agenda for June the 10th. The county is also in a healthy position financially with $63 million in reserves for future capital projects and $20.5 million in obligatory reserves from DCs and gas tax funds. We heard a presentation on the new Markdale Hospital, which is now under construction. This is a $69 million project and has been 20 years coming to fruition. The new facility will be 68,000 square feet, will offer 24/7 emergency room service, 8 exam and treatment rooms, a significant number of outpatient services and clinics, 4 patient rooms, and palliative care. Financially, this project is a 90-10 split, so the province provides 90% of the funds and the community is responsible for 10%. The hospital will have 90 staff and 2 doctors and a rotation of locums. More information can be found at www.gbhs.on.ca. The ask of the fundraising committee that presented to County Council was for us to increase our donation to the project by an additional $150,000. County Council has already committed $1 million, which has been presented. So that breakdown was partly for the property and the rest in cash. The committee is doing incredibly well raising funds, but they are still $2.7 million short of their goal. A development charges appeal committee was established to address a concern that arose in George and Bluffs. This committee will consist of the warden and 2 members of County Council. This is the first time a developer has challenged development charges posed to them, so that'll be an interesting process. There was also a presentation on the community safety and well-being plan, and as we all know, Meaford opted to do our plan independently, which I've always been very grateful for. The other municipalities in Grey and Bruce counties are partnered together, and that plan is now in its early stages of implementation. What we know about Grey County is there's a very high incidence of alcohol addiction in males, particularly between the ages of 35 and 49. And that rate is 22% higher than the province of Ontario, so very concerning. Emergency room visits related to alcohol are 68% higher than the provincial average. So these addictions are definitely a focus in the plan. Alcohol-related conditions are the 3rd leading cause of death in Grey and Bruce. Opioid poisonings have doubled since 2014. So again, a major focus on addictions and mental health. The plan can be found on the county website at www.grey.ca, and it is a very impressive plan. So I would encourage you, if you're looking for some extra reading material, to have a look at it. And I look forward to the presentation of our own Meaford plan shortly. And that was it, Your Worship, unless you wish to add anything.
Well, that was a good report. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And moving on to the Parks Advisory Committee, I believe Ross, Councillor Kentner, you're going to take this one, are you? Sorry.
No, I'm Heritage Advisory Committee.
My apologies, your Heritage. Sorry, my apologies. We have Councillor Bartley and Councillor Greenfield going to be double teaming. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We had a meeting. It wasn't near as long as the meetings we had before over Memorial Park. But what we did learn as a group that your St. Vincent Park, there's talk about putting a new entrance there. There's talk about putting a new washroom there. And we learned that we may have a partner, a private partner to help us with that. We may have to give up part of the park for a pump house to pump water up to the orchards on the highway. But they may be willing to put the entrance in and the washrooms for us. So we're quite interested in that going forward. So that's about the biggest thing that came out of the meeting on the parks. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bartley. Councillor Greenfield, did you want to add anything?
Councillor Bartley, as always, does a great job. We did talk briefly about smoking and vaping in our parks, and of the a few of the restrictions. I believe there's to be no smoking or vaping 9 meters from a building, and 20 meters from a playground area. And interestingly enough, in our off-leash dog bylaw, dog off-leash bylaw, it does say that there is to be no smoking in that off-leash area. Just a little interesting factor there. So a good meeting, but yeah, a lot of good information about the proposed pump house from down at St. Vincent Park. That'll be interesting in the future.
Thank you for that. Economic Development Advisory Committee, Deputy Mayor. It's a good, interesting discussion.
It was. We had our second meeting on June the 9th. Our homework from the first meeting in April was to submit each of us our goals and priorities to our manager of strategic initiatives based on the work plan that's identified through our new economic development strategies. So out of this came 5 goals that we've established for this committee. 1, to assist municipal council and staff in identifying a vision for the municipality. 2, to assist municipal council and staff with identifying strategies that will assist businesses that have experienced economic hardships due to the pandemic. 3, to assist municipal council and staff in developing initiatives that will foster long-term economic growth. 4, to assist municipal council and staff with identifying areas where there is a disconnect between their economic goals and the perceived goals of the business community, agricultural community, and the public at large. And 5, to advise on perceived communication issues between the municipality, staff council, and local businesses, agriculture, and the community at large. Our next meeting will be July 14th, and at that point in time, we will have opportunity to meet the consultant who will be involved with the official plan process. And one of the comments that had been made during our meeting was that, and we've all heard it before, that Meaford is often compared to a young Niagara on the Lake, and coincidentally, this consultant is from Niagara on the Lake, so that's going to be interesting. At the next meeting, we'll have a discussion about the questionnaire that's going to go out to the public, the survey, and the questions that will be on that to initiate the OP process. But back to the first goal, the visioning process. This committee feels it's really important for Meaford to establish our vision going forward, and we're really looking forward to being part of that process through the feedback that comes into the official plan survey and public engagement. So that really sums up what happened at that meeting. I thank you, Worship, and thank you for attending.
My pleasure, always. Okay, and on to Heritage Advisory Committee, and it's now your turn, Ross. Thank you, Councillor Kentner.
Thank you, Your Worship. We reviewed the second submission renderings for 141 Sykes Street North. We had a meeting, by the way, on Thursday last week. It's a residential building in the downtown Meaford Heritage Conservation District. Back on March the 22nd, you'll recall, this council approved a heritage permit to the owner, Mr. Outerbridge, on the conditions that the roof and turret be replaced with a material that reflects the existing heritage elements and in a manner similar to that on another turreted house at 162 Trowbridge Street West. Council's resolution also stated that other matters of the application would be deferred to a future meeting. The total project is really as much a major renovation as it is a restoration, and considerable progress has since been made on those renovations. Mr. Outerbridge apologized and said it was just difficult to limit construction progress once a crew is on the site. So staff helped us craft a motion to make expectations on the balance of this project perfectly clear. We also had a pre-consultation presentation from David Warren, architect for Skyhook, concerning 25 Nelson Street East, which is directly opposite the old fire hall. They specialize in advanced modular mid-rise residential design and construction and have been acquired by Zeckelman Industries of Kitchener. And it was gratifying that the firm gave us this opportunity to see their ideas for a mixed commercial residential building with underground parking. Back in 2015, the group of investors who own this property presented a plan for a 3-story structure that looked like it would fit in nicely with Meaford Hall and the old fire hall. The current plan seems to be a lot higher and a little bit tone deaf to our official plan. They have 4- and 5-story versions, and they closely resemble the apartments that are being proposed by a number of developers in Meaford. So we referenced the plan that was presented in 2015, and hopefully they will come back with something more in keeping with the 2 Part 4 designated properties on Nelson Street. We had a very good meeting covering a lot of items, but those were the principal points.
Thank you for that. Is there any Councillor Greenfield?
Thanks again, Your Worship. Just in addition to what Councillor Kettner has said about this proposal for Nelson Street, if my fellow councillors haven't had a chance to check out the Heritage Committee agenda and take a look at the drawings that we saw, I would advise you to do so. This is quite new. The steel modular units, to me anyway, very much new for our area. So I really want you to, if you get a few minutes, take a look at what was presented on the agenda, and it's quite interesting. And yeah, certainly the Heritage Committee, it was an eye opener for sure. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Other boards and committees, anyone else care to share? Seeing none, then we'll move on to the building report, which again is pretty exciting news. And I know, Councillor Greenfield, you always have a comment.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I'm having trouble pulling that up right now, but it's an absolutely amazing report. This is after only 5 months, the end of May. Our building permits, and I believe, just going from memory, which isn't always that accurate, something like $68 million of building. 62.
62 million.
I was a little optimistic there. Okay.
But that'll come.
Oh yes. This is after only 5 months, and this is no new school. This is no library figured in here. The permits for new homes extremely high if you figure them out per house. The main number is multi-residential, I believe, which is in itself something like $33 million of. It's just amazing. It's a sign of things to come. It looks as if. Now I'll be optimistic. We're going to blow our record building permits for the year right out of the water, and great things if we can get COVID behind us. Hopefully, maybe get some prices down a little bit, inspire a lot more building. But hey, municipality Meaford is definitely on the map.
It is indeed. Thank you for that, Councillor Greenfield. At this stage, I think we need another 5-minute break, but I'm going to ask for a motion to move out of committee of the whole first, and then we'll take a 5-minute break. Thank you. And Councillor Bell, Councillor Greenfield, Councillor Bell, and return at 4:07. Welcome, welcome back, everyone. We are we're all here except I don't see Councillor Vickers yet, but I'm sure he'll return when he can. Moving on to number 9 on our agenda. Number 9.1 is a notice of motion. Are there any notices of motion coming forward? Councillor Kentner.
Thank you, through your worship. I would just say that pending the outcome of our next our discussion in motions for decision, Councillor Greenfield's motion, I might be back with something in terms of traffic calming on Pearson and Ridge Road, which I see as a I see that whole corridor as a collector system. And at any rate, if we are able to accomplish something on that today, that would be fine. And if not, I may have would like to serve notice that I would bring something forward at a future meeting.
Thank you. So 9.2, we have 2 motions for decision. The first is the county allocation of payment-in-lieu settlement award presented by Deputy Mayor Shirley Keaveney. I'm assuming, Shirley, you will move that to put it on the table?
It would be my pleasure, Your Worship.
Thank you. Could I have a seconder for that motion, please, Councillor Kentner? And I will turn it over to you, Deputy Mayor, if you wish to speak to this.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. And I won't read the motion, but recognizing that we did receive the built funds and the county's portion being $370,000 that Mayor Barb and I would like to go to County Council and make the suggestion that those funds be allocated back into a reserve to be utilized for an affordable attainable housing project here in Meaford. And there are some potential possibilities that we'll ask the county to consider eventually, but right now we're hopeful that they will just agree with us that those funds should be allocated to the municipality of Meaford for such a project, primarily because the work in attaining these funds was done by Meaford, namely Mr. Chapman. So the precedent was set last year when the town of Blue Mountains discovered some additional assessment funding, and they were successful in having that allocated back to them for an affordable housing project by county council. So I think we've got a pretty good chance for success here, and we're looking for your support to permit us to go forward and have this discussion at county council.
Thank you, Shirley. That's exactly what we would like to do. There's it is the county's prerogative and priority as well for attainable housing. So I think this is a good move to request that money be diverted to a project in our municipality, since our treasurer Darcy Chapman did all of that great work to get us that money to begin with. Questions, comments? Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I think this is a terrific idea. One question though, if this goes through, does this mean Meaford has to partner in an affordable housing project, or would that still fall 100% under the county umbrella?
Well, I would say that on that front, that this would be, since the county has responsibility for housing, that would be at their discretion. And whether we actually partner with somebody, that's down the road when we look at where we want to go in terms of the attainable housing field. Certainly affordable housing is not our purview at all. That belongs solely with the county. Rob, I'll turn that over to you.
Yeah, I think just to expand on that, I think initially we just want them to put in a reserve and identify it for a project in Meaford. What that will be, we don't know yet. We will continue working with them and look at options in relation to that. I think that's the key point right now, and just make sure it gets set aside for our community.
Thanks, Rob. Anything further? Now call the question. All in favor of this motion going forward? And that is carried. Thank you. The second motion we have to discuss is presented by Councillor Greenfield regarding Miller Street. Councillor Greenfield, I'm assuming you will move that, will you? Thank you. And could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Kempner. And over to you, sir. Councillor Greenfield, did you want to speak to this?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not going to read the notice of motion. I think I'm sure everyone has. There are actually 4 different requests in it, but I do have a fairly short preamble that I would like to read with your permission. That hopefully helps explain the notice of motion. Miller Street is about 2 urban blocks long, not a very long street. Complaints, especially speeding concerns, go back long before the Transportation Master Plan came to us. Over the years, Miller has become a convenient bypass around the downtown, or a quick route to get to the grocery store, Timmy's, McDonald's, the beer store. Traffic volume of all characteristics has dramatically increased. Miller Street is one of the 3 major routes through town, through or around. Sykes Street, Highway 26, is a highway. It's made to accommodate heavy traffic. Nelson Street is a county road. It's made to accommodate heavy traffic. But Miller Street is a residential street. Let's not forget that. It is there to serve first and foremost the 14 residential properties on it. Those who live there deserve traffic on Miller to be cautious and respectful. There's already a high volume of vehicles on that short stretch, and we are sure that the volume of traffic will increase with construction this summer on Sykes and Nelson. Our council members are the caretakers of our community. Sometimes that means taking undesirable but necessary action in the name of safety. And I believe we need to do that on Miller. Now, according to my mathematics, which I'm not saying is accurate, reducing the speed limit from 50 to 40 kilometers an hour means an extra approximately 6 seconds of your time getting from one end of Miller at the bridge up to Pearson Street, whether you go up or down. 6 seconds. Now, if that's going to take away from your quality of life, then I apologize for that. But in my estimation, we need to take the extra time. We need to pay that little stretch of road the respect that it deserves. And the people who live on there need respect. They need the courtesy of calming our traffic, slowing it down, and as much as possible, considering that it is indeed a residential street. That's all from me, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greenfield. I will open it up for comments, questions from council. Deputy Mayor, and then Councillor Kentner.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. And Councillor Greenfield, I want you to know how much I appreciate both your motion and your comments. And I certainly agree with everything that you have shared with us today. My concern, and Councillor Kentner has mentioned Pearson and Ridge, is by going forward with these measures on Miller Street, we also have a number of other roads where residents are concerned, Grandview Drive and Center and Union and St. Vincent and Aiken. Streets come to mind where we've had residents reach out to us with concerns for speeding on those streets. So I'm just wondering, if we address this here with the measures suggested, what will we do for those residents on those streets? I know measures are suggested in the master transportation plan, and that's great, but I don't know how quickly they can get implemented. I know there's the opportunity to discuss a 40-kilometer speed limit within the whole of the municipality, and is that something we need to do? I'm worried about Miller Street and about Nelson Street this year with the construction that's going to be before us. If trucks are all rerouted to Nelson and it is down to one lane and we've got the hospital entrance, I'm just worried if that's going to cause problems over there. So I very much appreciate the motion, but I look to staff. Troy, perhaps if you can weigh in and help us understand what measures can be put in place this summer fairly immediately for those other roads, and what we can anticipate on the Nelson Hill in particular during the construction days if trucks are rerouted.
Through your worship. Thank you for your question, Deputy Mayor. I guess, so you referred to a couple of different roads where I know traffic concerns have been identified, and staff have received them as well. We have been collecting traffic data, so we understand where the locations are, where there's more significant speeding and more significant traffic. Miller Street definitely is one of the more higher concern locations. And I know that there's a lot of resident concern on Pearson and Pearson and Ridge Road as well. So I think focusing on the locations with the higher speed concerns is important. But I think like this is a good approach to look at doing traffic calming. We could wait until the new bylaw is passed after the transportation master plan. Sorry, just 1 second. For that. So these would definitely be interim measures that are above and beyond the current interim measures that we are already following. So it really is, I guess, at this point, council's decision on those next steps, and we can help advise what locations we're seeing higher concerns based on the data we have collected. But Miller Street definitely falls into one of those categories, especially as it is very much a residential road that is currently seeing a lot of commercial or larger traffic traveling at very high speeds, unfortunately, in some cases. So we can work with council to determine all of the locations that do require those, but this one definitely falls into one of those higher concern areas. And then with regards to construction, so the water main construction on Nelson Street should proceed over a month or a month and a half. I know the last time I updated council, That work was supposed to have already been commenced. Unfortunately, there's been a delay in their material delivery. So it is scheduled to occur later or start later this month, if they do receive the material as it is currently scheduled. That work will take up a lane of traffic on Nelson Street, which will cause there to be delays in traffic. So only one lane will be available. So traffic either will be going in one direction or the other. This is typical of construction. Yes, traffic will be stopped for a momentary time. Sometimes it can be up to a couple minutes, but then traffic will be able to continue. As Nelson Street isn't one of the municipal roads, I'm not sure what the traffic counts on it are, but it's definitely not as significant as some of the larger roads such as Sykes Street. So, you know, there will be less delays than in some circumstances. But, you know, the traffic will still be able to get through, and there'll be minimal delays to the people traveling in the entirety of their trip. So we will ensure that traffic will be able to flow through on Nelson Street as anticipated. And measures like this will allow that traffic not to then utilize our residential roads as a cut through, to then further impede the residents that live on them.
Thanks for that, Tori. I'm just wondering if you can expand a little bit on, I know that I appreciate the answers that you have given to our residents in terms of Ridge Road, the Ridge and Pearson corridor that has been of concern as well as Miller Street. And certainly appreciate the passion of everyone involved with these issues. It's certainly important work that we need to consider at this stage. But I'm wondering, having the master plan coming on stream fairly quickly, I would think, how long would it take and what would be the priority in terms of moving ahead with reducing or having a look rather at the speeds for speeding issues in all of our urban streets? And if this is something that could be expedited to address these particular concerns for both of these issues, as well as the other priority roads.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the Transportation Master Plan, there's a couple of different items in it that address some of these issues. So one of them is that they have recommended a 40-kilometer-an-hour speed limit in the urban area. That could come to council shortly after passing or endorsement of the Transportation Master Plan. And if council decides to proceed with it, we would just need to pass that bylaw and then put up new signage where we currently have the 50-kilometer-an-hour signage entering our urban area. We would change those out for 40-kilometer-an-hour. We would have to have a discussion with the MTO and the county with regards to how those roads would be impacted. But for our municipal roads in the urban area, that transition could be made fairly quickly. With regards to traffic calming, the Transportation Master Plan does provide a draft policy as one of the attachments to the document. That document outlines kind of 2 stages to identify when a road qualifies for traffic calming, and then the steps that can be taken, whether utilizing passive traffic calming or more permanent measures. And there's some steps in how that is done. So as that policy is fairly developed through the Transportation Master Plan, again, we could bring that forward fairly quickly back to council for approval, so that it would then be a bylaw that we could then follow. However, depending on the implementation of the process that we decide is necessary for traffic calming in different locations, if there are funding requirements, some of those could take longer depending on what our availability is for funds for those. A lot of, there are some options that we could incorporate into some of our existing budgets, but some of them might not be viable or useful in certain locations. So there are some things that we could do fairly quickly out of the Transportation Master Plan. but again, like we're currently in the 30-day review period. The report isn't intended to come back to council for endorsement until the end of July. And then if it gets passed, it would get passed in September. And then following that, we would then have to bring these back to council for review and approval. So, you know, in the spectrum of things, they are on a quicker time scale, but there is still time that would have to occur before these could be in place. And I know that there are some concerns in these areas that have been ongoing for many years. So some residents want to get them dealt with sooner than that timeline.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for that. And Councillor Bell?
Thanks, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Greenfield, for bringing this forward. I mentioned earlier in today's council meeting that this council does listen to the residents, and this is another case where I know, Councillor Greenfield, you're desperately trying here to let the people know that we are sensitive and we are listening to the folks. And there's one thing that I just want to bring a little comment on, and it goes back to even our first term for myself in 2014. We have had OPP inspectors make presentations to council at the general presentation. And even in those meetings, we have mentioned speeding. And as the chair of the current Police Advisory Committee, we've now had 2 inspectors. And I know, Madam Mayor, you're always there at those meetings. You make a great effort of being there. And I know our clerk, Mr. Smith, he's always faithful coming. And I know that you will verify the fact that we always talk about speeding. So our real problem is that we do not have police presence to put tickets so that people know that when they speed in the town of Meaford, there is a cost to be paid. And we have addressed this to the inspectors, and the inspectors are very gracious. They tell us that they hear us, and they tell us that their staff sergeants and their shift sergeants, they deploy the forces. And we have no ability to tell them what to do. Our job was to tell them what the community is saying and what our observations are. And we leave the deployment of forces to the inspector. So part of our problem here in the town of Meaford is not having police presence. And I know most of you who go in and around the city of Owen Sound know that there are certain places that you do not speed. And I know for both of you who head off to county council, I know you know the road that you just don't speed on out around the hospital. You're gonna get nabbed. So part of this whole transportation situation, and also it flows over into our policing of our community, I think we need to work hand in hand with this, with the OPP, if we carry on with the OPP and what they have said in councils previous, there's a change. I'm hoping that what we will truly see will be a more present OPP, and the people will start to get the message that you start speeding through the town of Meaford, you may get pulled over. So I just wanted to bring that and throw that in there because I do believe that it's part of the mix for consideration. Thank you.
Councillor Bell. And Councillor Kentner, you were next. You're on mute.
Sorry. We've got the transportation master plan, but we know we're not going to be able to implement it for this summer. And I guess my point is there not in both dealing with Miller Street and with the other collector roads that are part of that corridor, is it not possible for us to introduce some measures that conform to the TMP, but can be done now? And I know that won't satisfy everybody to the degree necessary, but it would, I think, be an act of good faith on our part to work with people and to try and make those roads safer this summer.
That's a question for you, Tori.
Through your worship. So Councillor Greenfield's motion definitely does that. So he has identified the installation of both signage for no heavy truck traffic, as well as permanent speed signs to be located on Miller Street. And so those items reflect that draft traffic calming policy that's in the transportation master plan as passive traffic calming items. And so what we are currently utilizing is those speed signs. However, as we only have one set in the municipality, they are on trailers, and what we are currently doing is rotating them between locations that have been identified as concerns. So the intention of this would be to have permanent signs located on Miller Street to have more long-lasting impact on reducing the speed of people using the road. And I know that we utilized those signs earlier this year on Pearson and Ridge Road as well. We had them out there, I think, for 2 to 3 weeks. And I know the residents that I have spoken with and have reached out to council would like to see measures like that put in place permanently. So they definitely fall in line with that policy and match the data that we have collected and will help with the speeding that is currently seen in those 2 locations.
Yes, supplementary, Councillor Kentner, go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you. So through your worship, Tori, would it then be possible in your mind to just broaden Councillor Greenfield's motion to include the 3 collector roads that are part of this collector system?
Through your worship, the only issue I see with just including Pearson and Ridge Road in Councillor Greenfield's motion is that Miller Street, he's identified having no heavy truck signage, which does not reflect the transportation master plan or current use of Pearson and Ridge Road as a connector from the county road to the provincial highway. So I guess without that portion of it, yes, I think that we definitely could have a similar motion that reflects Pearson and Ridge Road. The other concern with that signage is I know that is a ambulance route, which would definitely fall into that heavy route. I assume in most locations that would be an exemption, but I would just be concerned with that signage for that location because it is considered a collector road in the transportation master plan.
Councillor Kentner.
Thank you for your forbearance, Your Worship. So I guess what I two options. Harley, would you be willing to take out the reference to heavy trucks on Miller, and more properly, you would like me to come back with a motion in 2 weeks' time to just extend the same traffic calming measures to Pearson and Ridge Road?
Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Councillor Kentner. And before I go any further, I do want to thank Director Victoria for her assistance on this notice of motion. First of all, you beat me to the punch. You got a flashing sign down there before before I got to bring the notice of motion, and I really appreciate that. And you're mentioning maybe fixed signs there permanently. I appreciate that. As far as Councillor Kentner bringing in an amendment, that's his prerogative. I have no objection to that. That's a part of the democratic process. If he wanted to add that, those two streets, he's quite welcome to bring in the amendment, and we could deal with that. I do personally think that right now there's enough in my motion to deal with. I do want to mention that Miller has been in the transportation master plan marked for some kind of speed reduction. It actually seemed to me when I read the transportation master plan that Miller Street was the first star in the report. It was mentioned, I think, more than any place else. And to me, when there's that much concentration on one particular 2-block area, there needs to be some work done there, and it needs to be done fast, not September, October. We need to put these measures into place now. And I thank Councillor Bell for speaking about the OPP. Folks, we pay approximately $2 million a year for OPP protection. And I think it's high time our municipality, whether it gets us any place or not, we speak out to the OPP and say, hey, look, we need you. We need the black and whites around. Okay, I'll digress. Thanks, Shirley.
Okay. Is there Matt, over to you?
Thank you, Mayor Clumpus. Just when I thought I was going to get through a meeting without talking. Just on the OPP note, I just want to reinforce the message that we need to be very careful when we say that the OPP are not in our municipality, because they are. We are paying a lot of money for them, and they do provide the service that we're looking for. What you're talking about right now is about police cars sitting on the side of the road doing speed enforcement and being dedicated to speed enforcement. I absolutely appreciate that that's something that this municipality would like. And I think our OPP detachment acknowledge that and do wish to do it. In fact, we had a suggestion about how to do some of that at the last meeting that the council decided not to follow. But when you talk about there being no police presence in the municipality, you do both yourselves and the OPP a disservice, and you spread a rumor that harms our community. So please be careful with the words that you use when you talk about our OPP and whether they are in our municipality or not.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. I was just going to jump in and say, too, that I see the two OPP officers on bicycles in addition to the patrol cars that are within our municipality frequently. So, yeah, we have to be very careful on that with our comments. Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And just to tell council, I agree with what you're doing, but you're going to open up a floodgate. You're going to have 100 different people on 100 different roads wanting the same thing. I strongly believe the whole urban area should be at 40, but it doesn't matter if it's at 40, 30, or 20. If you don't have enough enforcement, it doesn't matter. Now, maybe Matt could come back. The OPP are talking about bringing back cameras, speed ticketing cameras. Tori, is that a possibility we could get some cameras and be maybe a test pilot for them?
I'll take this one. The rules about speed cameras were changed about 18 months ago. And so municipalities, and it is a municipal decision, and they will be municipal cameras, not OPP cameras. Municipalities can now choose to purchase speed cameras, install them in various locations, and levy fines based upon people speeding as they go past those speed cameras. There are a couple of odd restrictions to that, in that you have to put up notice for a significant period of time that speed cameras are going to be installed in a particular location before you're actually allowed to install them and start ticketing. So that tends to mean that just people will slow down through that area and then speed up again afterwards if that's something they're concerned about. Speed cameras is something that I've dealt with for many years in the United Kingdom. As some of you may know, there are speed cameras literally everywhere. They are pretty effective. It is something that council could ask us as staff to look at. The one thing that I'm hearing and reading from some of our trade organizations and from other municipalities is that the investment in the speed cameras up front is very expensive. And so the return on the investment is very, very slow. That's, again, a council choice about whether you believe that that's a priority that you want to be investing your money into, or whether that money should be going somewhere else.
Thank you, Matt. Council, yes, Tori?
Thank you, Worship. I just have a few things to add to that as well. So our transportation master plan has recommended looking into the speed enforcement units, but potentially partnering with the county or other Grey County municipalities to do so. The other caveat to the use of them is that they can only be used in community safety zones. So that, I guess, poses a bit of an issue within our municipality, as currently, I guess the cameras are intended to be utilized in school areas. So big cities like Toronto, Toronto has done a pilot project where they have purchased 50 of these units and are transporting them between different school zones. I don't know how long they're keeping them in each of the locations, but that's how they're dealing with them and trying them out. The city of Barrie has purchased one as part of its pilot project, but there are significant costs to it. There is information in the transportation master plan. I was trying to find the exact details. I think they're in Appendix G, and I can follow up with the actual numbers. But if my memory is correct, I think they're about $80,000 annually per unit. That's what the city of Barrie has worked out the costs of it. So I guess depending on how much revenue you receive from it, they may be cost more or less. So there are options for a municipality to look into utilizing them, but they definitely have restrictions that may not make them as beneficial at this time.
Thank you, Tori. So Councillor Bell?
Thanks again, Madam Mayor, and thanks, Mr. Smith. Reinforcing the fact that the OPP are our police officers in our municipality, and on that board we get the reports of what their activities are, and they are varied, and we get those reports about the incidents that they attend to, and so on. And when they're out there, I mean, I have said even to an inspector that I haven't seen you doing a ride check, and the inspector said back to me, well, we know when we're on the road, you just might not have seen us. And so I think that's great that we make sure that our residents do know that the OPP are here and they are around, and they are more than aware of speeding generally. I think at the last meeting, they were talking about what's going on up on the Bruce Peninsula, and they have no explanation as to why people are speeding to such extreme times, and how many they have pulled over with serious charges. So we have the OPP in our municipality, and we do get the reports, and they're doing a lot of work. A lot of times we don't see. So thanks for that, Mr. Smith.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor as recommended, unless Councillor Vickers.
Thank you, Your Worship. And some of my concerns, I agree with everything that Harley has here in this notice of motion. But I have to agree with Steve with what he said. You know, if we do this, we're opening the floodgates, and there'll be every street and every road in the country will want the same service and the same notice of motion to go through. As much as you'd like to do it all, I don't think, financial, maybe I'm talking about money a little bit too much today, but financially, I just don't understand how we could possibly do it. And it'll be like a favor if a person in the community gets the ear of a counselor that brings a notice of motion forward, then their street will get looked after. And I don't think that's really the fairest way to do it. I think we need to be sure and have a good plan. And if we have to wait for the master transportation plan, then so be it. But to start doing one-offs on notice of motions from counselors for certain streets, I think it's a very slippery slope to get onto. So anyway, I'm sorry, Harley, but I don't think I can support this one for you for those reasons.
Thank you, Councillor Vickers. Just to follow up with that, Tori, can you let us know that the traffic calming measures that you have in place now, the transportable speed limit, the signs can be utilized throughout the summer months and will be utilized on the hot spots that we know are there until we can get our master plan in action and enacted and operationalized?
We do have roads identified through the complaint form on our website, where we have collected data to show that they warrant the use of those. And so the intention is to utilize those signs on a 2 to 3 week basis and continue to rotate them to different locations. Unfortunately, throughout this spring, we've been dealing with some technical difficulties with them and have had some warranty work completed. Them getting back out onto Miller Street was the first location since that work was done. So we do intend to have them out from this point onward, and hopefully working properly in all of those locations that are both identified by residents, but then also we've collected data to show that those speeding concerns do warrant the use of them. So yes, we will be.
Thank you for that. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I really appreciate this discussion. I know it's been talked about, but I'm wondering if there's a way to pull this together in recognizing the concerns on Miller Street that Councillor Greenfield has brought forward, and also as Councillor Kentner has suggested, Pearson and Ridge. And if we look at the Transportation Master Plan and find ourselves that it has been identified as a collector road. So if we add it to this motion with the caveat that it is included because it's a collector, we know that the other roads are a problem, and we can suggest that they will be addressed through the Transportation Master Plan process that you shared with us, Tori, through the summer and into September, and those roads then will all be looked at the same point in time. And then there's the issue of the truck traffic, so we'd have to have a separate addendum to the amendment to recognize that trucks have to travel on Pearson and Ridge. But is that a way to get around it today to include Pearson and Ridge because of it being collector?
Through you, Madam Mayor, my suggestion would be that if you want to do something about Pearson and Ridge roads, that you do that in a separate motion in 2 weeks' time following Councillor Kentner's notice of motion. The reason for that is twofold. One is that we haven't notified the public that you're even going to be talking about Pearson and Ridge Road by it appearing on an agenda. And there may be people who have a different opinion on this to some of the people who've been asking you for restrictions. The second is exactly your comments, Deputy Mayor, is that to get wording on the fly right now that gets you to where you want to go for two pretty different situations, I don't think would be very productive. Whereas if Councillor Kentner brings that forward at the next meeting, you're 2 weeks later, not a lot has happened, and we can get the wording right.
Thank you for that, Mr. Smith. All right, I think we've had a very thorough discussion on this item, and unless there's one last question, I'm going to call the question. Councillor Greenfield.
Thanks, Your Worship. And yes, thanks to my fellow council members for the discussion. I appreciate that. However, I am going to ask for a recorded vote on this, please.
Okay, so the motion on the floor is Councillor Greenfield's motion about Miller Street. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I think we're all aware of what that text of that says. So starting the recorded vote with the councillor that requested it. Councillor Greenfield.
Yes.
Councillor Bartley. I see a no, Councillor Bartley, but I did not hear one.
No.
Thank you. Councillor Bell.
No.
Councillor Kentner.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Keaveney.
Yes.
Councillor Vickers, I missed you, I apologise.
No.
Mayor Clumpus.
No.
The motion fails 4-3.
At this point, we need a motion to extend, please. Somebody move, and Councillor Greenfield, Councillor Vickers, thank you. Okay, and moving on now to the adoption of the minutes of council of the May 31st meeting. Be it resolved that Council of Municipality Meaford hereby adopt the minutes of the council meeting held May 31st, 2021. Mover and a seconder, put that on the table, please. Councillor Bartley, and a seconder, and Deputy Mayor, thank you. All in favor? And that is carried. And the closed meeting of May 17th, 2021. May I have a mover and a seconder again for that, please? Councillor Kentner and Councillor Greenfield, thank you. And that will not have discussion, so all in favor of this minutes, that is carried, thank you. Okay, and the planning public meeting of May the 17th. Could I have a mover and a seconder for that? Put it on the table. And Councillor Bartley and Councillor Vickers. Any comments or questions on that? Seeing none, all in favor? And that is carried. Okay, is there anything on our communication list that needs to be pulled for further discussion? Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mayor Clumpus. There's actually three of them. They're all about the same thing, the Gates of Kent. So there's number 8, number 9, number 17. There's probably more. I would just like an update on the Gates of Kent.
Okay. Is there anything else on, well, let's deal with that first and then see if there's anything else to discuss. Rob, can you handle that one, please?
Yes, to your worship, the matter has been turned over to our solicitor for a legal opinion on the perceived ability for the municipality to order something to be changed at the Gates of Kent. So it's currently being reviewed by our lawyer and be reporting back to council upon that review being completed.
Thank you, Rob. Okay, is there anything else on the correspondence list that we need to discuss? I don't see anything. Okay, so now it is time to go into closed session. I need a mover and a seconder, please, to go into closed session to discuss with the CAO, clerk and treasurer in attendance to discuss the security of municipal property, specifically cybersecurity. I have a mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Bartley, Deputy Mayor, thank you. All in favor? It is carried. Thanks. Okay, so we have to exit here and go into the other link that Margaret has sent us. Okay, we have resumed. We went into, we all hear that. Let's just. I'm sorry, I can't see all of council. Are we all back in?
Yes, everybody is now here.
Sorry, Matt, something's happened to my system here. Can you hear me?
Yes, everybody is here and you are able to carry on.
All right, then I will carry on by noting that council went into closed session at 5 p.m. with the CAO, clerk and treasurer in attendance, and we discussed only the security of municipal property, specifically cybersecurity. And with that, we come to the end of our agenda, and I will thank everyone for your participation this afternoon. It's been a long session, but a very informative one, and I will declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of the evening.